I am Maria Griffin. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I would see the day my daughter-in-law, Lauren, would toss pictures of my late husband into the trash. To her, they were just scrap paper. My Thomas had been gone for 3 years, but those photos were still living, breathing pieces of my soul. I pulled them out of the garbage after midnight, bent, stained, and buried under wet kitchen waste. It was late, so I didn't scream. I didn't wake the house. I just rescued them one by one, wiped them clean with shaking hands, and made one quiet call. Come morning, Lauren would learn exactly whose home she was trying to erase my husband from. If this story touches your heart, please hit like and subscribe to stay with me until the end. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if someone threw away your most precious memories? Where are you watching from today? And what time is it there? I truly love reading your replies. My Thomas built this house long before he called it our home. I tell people that whenever they complimented the white porch railing, the tiny flower boxes under the windows, or the proud maple tree standing tall in the middle of our yard, they'd say, "Maria, you have such a beautiful home." I'd smile, knowing beauty was only half the truth. Thomas's own hands had touched every single corner of that place. He was a carpenter by trade, though he always claimed he just knew how to fix what was broken. With broad shoulders, calloused hands, and a laugh that filled rooms before he even walked in, he was my world. When we married, we had nothing. I worked at our small Ohio town library, shelving books, helping kids find stories, and stamping due dates on those old paper cards. Thomas worked endless hours, building cabinets and taking side jobs. We didn't buy this house because we had money. We bought it because we were incredibly stubborn. The house was ancient. Peeling paint, a sagging kitchen floor by the sink, and an upstairs bathroom that groaned like a ghost every time you turned on the faucet. The realtor kept apologizing for the mess, but Thomas just stood there in the doorway, taking it in with his quiet smile. He got that look whenever his mind was already measuring out lumber and dreaming up walls. He turned to me and said, "Maria, this place just needs someone to love it." That was him. He believed anything could be saved with enough love. So we bought it. We fixed it up slowly, paycheck by paycheck. Thomas rebuilt the porch. I painted the kitchen cabinets bright yellow to bring in some sunshine during the freezing winters. He built the living room bookshelves after I joked that our books were stacked in cardboard boxes like forgotten relatives. Crafting them from heavy oak, he sanded every shelf until they felt like silk under my touch. When our boy Daniel arrived, Thomas carved his initials under the bottom stair. D.G., Daniel Griffin. He said the kid would run these steps so much, the house needed to know his name. And Daniel sure did. He tore down those halls with toy trucks, building massive forts out of couch cushions. Once he spilled grape juice on the carpet and sobbed louder than I did, terrified he'd ruined something precious. Thomas just knelt down, blotted the stain, and whispered, "People matter more than carpets, son." He was that kind of father, patient, steady, and so gentle that children absolutely adored him. To me, those photos weren't just decorations. They were physical proof that our beautiful life had been real. Like the shot of Thomas cradling newborn Daniel, his face frozen in pure awe, holding his entire world wrapped in a blue blanket. Or us on our 25th anniversary, posing beneath the maple tree he planted, the spring we moved in. One showed him in the garage covered in sawdust, smiling by the rocking chair he made when my joints started aching. And of course, our wedding picture. Thomas in a boxy navy suit, and me in a simple lace wedding dress my mother helped alter at our kitchen table. We were young, anxious, and broke. Looking at it, I could still feel his warm hand holding mine. I could hear his whisper, "Whatever comes, we face it together." For 42 years, we did. We faced tight bills, illness, fights, and the quiet heartbreak of watching our boy grow into a man who didn't seem to need us anymore. We faced his cancer together too. But I'll admit, there were dark nights when I was certain the grief would break me. The illness crept in silently. That was the worst part. First fatigue, then weight loss, then endless scans. Those scans became whispered talks, leading to the words no wife ever wants to hear. Stage 4. Yet, Thomas stayed as calm and dignified as he had always been. I wasn't strong. I cried in the hospital parking lot until I could barely breathe. He just sat there rubbing my back and whispered, "Maria, don't mourn me while I'm still sitting right next to you." So I tried. We spent his last months in our home. He'd sit in the chair he built with his own hands, watching the maple leaves turn gold. Daniel visited when he had time, but work kept him busy. Back then, I actually believed that was his only excuse. I didn't realize how much distance could grow while we all played happy family. Thomas passed on a rainy Thursday. The house went cold. It wasn't empty, but rather listening, like every room was waiting for his familiar footsteps, wondering why they never returned. For months, his work jacket hung by the back door. His favorite coffee mug stayed in its usual spot. I kept his photos on display because when the grief got heavy, looking at his smile reminded me that love doesn't die just because a body does. Daniel worried, so he started visiting on Sundays. Bless him, he tried fixing things, inheriting his father's sweet heart, but absolutely none of his handyman skills. He'd try to tighten a loose hinge and somehow make the squeaking worse. We'd laugh, and I thought we might actually survive this. Then he met Lauren. At first, I wanted to love her. I really did. Daniel brought her over one evening in early spring. She was polished, pretty, and confident, with a bright smile and a way of speaking that sounded rehearsed. She complimented my house. She complimented my cooking. Standing before Thomas's and my wedding photo, she said, "You two looked so sweet together." I felt so grateful then, maybe too grateful. When you are a widow, kindness to your memories feels like kindness to your heart. I mistook her politeness for real tenderness. I mistook her attention for respect. Daniel seemed happy with her, and that was all that mattered to me. After losing Thomas, I wanted my son to have someone. I wanted laughter in his life, and holidays with warmth instead of empty chairs and quiet plates. So when Daniel asked if they could stay with me for a bit after their wedding, I said yes, before he could even finish explaining. "It'll just be temporary, Mom. We want to save money for our own place." Lauren touched my hand across the table, adding, "We don't want to impose, Maria. Really, we'll help with everything." I believed her. I told them my house had room, and that family always helped family. I told myself Thomas would have wanted our son under our roof if he needed us. For those first few weeks, it actually felt nice. Lauren bought fresh flowers for my kitchen. Daniel mowed the lawn. Their little daughter, Emma, filled my house with the sweet sound of cartoons and endless questions. She was 6 then, all bright eyes and soft curls. She loved sitting beside me while I told stories about the grandfather she barely remembered. "Did Grandpa Thomas build this?" she would ask, touching the bookshelf. "Yes, sweetheart," I would say. "Did he build the porch?" "Yes." "Did he build you?" I laughed so hard that first time, tears filled my eyes. "No, baby, but he helped make me stronger." Those moments kept me going. But slowly, quietly, the air in my home began to change. Lauren stopped asking before moving my things. A vase would disappear from the mantel. A quilt Thomas's mother made was folded away in a closet. The framed photograph of Thomas in his workshop moved from the living room shelf to the hallway, and then into a cardboard box in the spare room. Each time, Lauren had a reason. It looked cluttered. It didn't match. I thought it might be painful for you to see it every day. That last excuse was the cleverest because it made her sound concerned while she did exactly what she wanted. Daniel would glance at me with tired eyes and say, "Mom, Lauren is just trying to make the house feel fresh." Fresh, as if my life with Thomas had gone stale. I tried to be patient, telling myself every young wife wanted to make a home feel like her own. I told myself I was just being sensitive, that grief had made me protective. I told myself Thomas would want peace more than pride. But deep down, I felt something tightening. Lauren wasn't just changing curtains or moving furniture. She was removing evidence. Evidence that Thomas had once lived here. Evidence that I had loved him. Evidence that this house had a history before she walked through my front door with her perfect smile and quiet plans. What Lauren did not know, what Daniel seemed to have forgotten, was that Thomas had made one final decision before he passed away. He had called Robert Hayes, our family attorney, to make sure this house belonged to me alone. Not Daniel, not any future spouse, and certainly not anyone who thought grief made an old woman weak. Thomas had looked at me from his hospital bed, his hand thin but warm around mine, and said, "Maria, promise me you'll never let anyone push you out of the home we built." At the time, I thought he meant loneliness. I didn't know he was warning me about family. Maria Griffin didn't enter my life like a sudden storm. She entered like sunlight, which was exactly what made it so hard to see the shadow trailing behind her. The first time Daniel brought her to dinner, she arrived with a bouquet of white lilies and sparkling cider, because Daniel told her I didn't drink wine. I remember thinking how thoughtful that was. She wore a cream-colored sweater, pearl earrings, and a smile that made you feel chosen. She hugged me gently, not too close, not too stiff, and said, "Maria, Daniel has told me so much about you." Not Mrs. Griffin, not Daniel's mother, just Maria. At the time, I thought it sounded warm. She walked through my house slowly, admiring the woodwork, the bookshelves, and the porch Thomas repaired. She asked about the maple tree in the front yard, laughing softly when I said Thomas planted it because he wanted something that would outlive his stubbornness. "He sounds like he was a wonderful man," Lauren said, looking at his photograph. It was that little word "was" that stung, but I ignored it. People never know how to speak about the dead. They either avoid them entirely or place them too neatly in the past, as if love ends when a heartbeat stops. Daniel watched Lauren that evening with absolute pride in his eyes. He kept reaching for her hand under the dinner table. He laughed more than I had heard him laugh in months. Because I was his mother and had prayed so many lonely nights for my son to find happiness, I chose to trust whatever made him smile. Lauren worked as a marketing consultant for a real estate development firm in Columbus. She knew how to speak to people, how to make an idea sound elegant, how to turn a plain sentence into something completely polished. Daniel worked as an operations manager for a regional hardware supplier, steady and practical like his father, though not nearly as handy. They seemed balanced. He was quiet. She was confident. He was cautious. She was ambitious. He avoided conflict, while she stepped directly into it with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. I didn't see that last part right away. After they married, Daniel called me one Sunday afternoon. His voice had that careful tone grown children use when they want something, hoping you will offer before they have to ask. "Mom," he said, "Lauren and I have been talking." I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea cooling in front of me. About what? Saving money, getting ahead. Rent is ridiculous right now. And with Emma starting school soon, we thought maybe, he paused, maybe we could stay with you for a little while. I looked around my kitchen. The yellow cabinets Thomas and I painted together were chipped near the handles. His old coffee mug was still sitting on the second shelf. My house had been too quiet for too long. "How long is a little while?" I asked him. 6 months, Daniel replied quickly. "Maybe 9. Just until we can put together a down payment." Then Lauren's voice chimed in faintly from the background. "Tell her we'll help with bills." Daniel repeated her words. "Lauren says we'll help with bills, groceries, utilities, whatever you need." I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why 2 working adults with decent incomes had absolutely no savings. I should have heard the strain beneath Daniel's polite tone. But all I heard was my son needing me. So I said yes. They moved in 3 weeks later. Boxes, suitcases, Emma's stuffed animals, and far more furniture than I ever expected for a temporary stay. Lauren directed the movers like she already owned the place. "Put that against the living room wall. No, not there. That corner gets better light. Daniel, ask your mom if we can move this table." She said it, but she rarely waited for my answer. At first, I tried to be gracious. I cleared out the hall closet. I gave them the master bedroom upstairs for the morning light. I even moved my sewing basket from the den so Emma would have room for her toys. Lauren thanked me constantly in those early days. "You're so generous, Maria. This is such a blessing. We don't know what we'd do without you." Those words warmed me. A widow can live on small kindnesses for a long time. Emma made the house feel alive again, leaving crayons on the table and tiny sneakers by the door. She asked if my maple tree was magic because its leaves turned red before any others on our street. At night, I'd hear Daniel reading to her, his voice low and gentle. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and remember Thomas reading to Daniel in that very same room upstairs. For a while, I convinced myself this was what healing felt like. Then Lauren started making suggestions. Tiny ones. Harmless ones. "Maria, have you thought about replacing these curtains? They make the room look so dark." "Maria, this rug is beautiful, but it's a little old-fashioned, don't you think? Do you really use all these dishes? Minimalism is just so much easier at your age." At your age? She said it sweetly, always with a smile, as if she were helping me step into some better version of my own life. One afternoon, I came home from the store and found my living room completely rearranged. Thomas's chair had been dragged away from the window and pushed into a dark corner. A sleek gray armchair Lauren brought from storage sat in its place. I stood there holding my groceries, staring at the empty space where my husband's chair had always been. Lauren walked in from the dining room, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh, good, you're back," she said. "I hope you don't mind. The room flows so much better now." I looked at Thomas's chair. The cushion still held the gentle dip from years of his body resting there. That chair was by the window because Thomas liked watching the maple tree. Lauren's smile didn't vanish, but it turned cold. "I understand," she said. "But Maria, Thomas isn't sitting there anymore." The bag of apples nearly slipped from my hands. Daniel, carrying a box down the hall, froze. For 1 second, I thought he'd say something. I thought he'd look at his wife and tell her that some things deserved a little gentleness. Instead, he looked down and mumbled, "Mom, maybe just try it out for a few days." That was the first time I felt like a guest in my own home. Not because a chair moved, but because my son had. After that, Lauren got bolder. She labeled pantry shelves. She swapped my floral kitchen towels for plain white ones, bought matching storage bins, and threw my old handwritten recipes into a box marked miscellaneous. "My grandmother wrote some of those," I told her. "Oh, I didn't throw them out," Lauren replied. "I just organized them." But there is a kind of organizing that feels a lot like erasing. Soon she was calling my home our place on the phone. "You should come by our place sometime. We're updating our living room. Our backyard is perfect for summer." Each time I told myself not to be so petty. They lived here now. Maybe it was natural. Maybe I was just too sensitive. Then one evening, as Emma colored, Lauren opened a kitchen drawer and pulled out a folder. "What's this?" she asked. I looked over. House papers, insurance, taxes, repairs. Just normal things. Her eyes lit up for a split second before she softened her expression. "Oh, you keep all that in here for convenience? Smart." She flipped the folder open without asking. "Is the mortgage paid off?" I reached across the counter and quietly shut it. "Yes." Lauren stared at my hand on the folder, then looked up at me. "That must be such a relief." "It is." "And Thomas handled all of that before he passed?" "Thomas and I handled it together." Something flickered in her eyes, annoyance, or maybe pure calculation. Daniel walked in before she could say anything else. Lauren pivoted instantly, smoothly asking him what he wanted for dinner. She smiled like she hadn't just been snooping through private documents. That night, I lay awake for hours. My old house creaked around me in familiar, heavy ways. The pipes clicked. The wind brushed the upstairs windows. Somewhere down the hallway, little Emma murmured softly in her sleep. I lay there thinking about Lauren's questions. The mortgage, the insurance, the papers. I remembered Thomas in his hospital bed, his voice fragile but firm. "Promise me you'll never let anyone push you out of the home we built." Back then, I just squeezed his hand and promised to give him peace. Now, for the very first time, I wondered if he had seen a weakness in Daniel that I had desperately refused to acknowledge. It wasn't cruelty. Daniel wasn't a cruel boy. But weakness can easily become an open door for cruel people. The next morning, Lauren came downstairs with her coffee and a brilliant smile. "I was thinking," she said, leaning against my kitchen counter. This place has so much potential. With the right updates, it could be worth a fortune. I stared at her. A fortune? She gave a quiet laugh. Well, not a fortune, but you know what I mean. The neighborhood is changing. Young families want character, and this place has character. Of course, she said quickly. I just mean if you ever wanted to downsize, Daniel and I could help. And there it was. Downsize. A gentle word for being pushed out of the life I built. I slowly stirred sugar into my tea. I am not leaving my home, Lauren. For the first time since I met her, she did not answer right away. Then she smiled, but the warmth was gone. It was a locked door. The first picture went missing on a Tuesday. I remember because that was the day I volunteered at the library's Children's Reading Hour. I had been volunteering since retiring, partly because I loved books, and partly because the library was a place where grief was not treated like an inconvenience. That afternoon, I came home carrying a bag of library books and a jar of chicken soup my friend Susan Whitaker insisted I take. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No cartoons playing in the den. No Emma humming to herself. No Lauren talking on the phone in that polished voice she used to sound important. I stepped into the living room and froze. The photo of Thomas in his workshop was gone. It had always sat on the oak bookshelf he built for me. In the photo, he wore his old flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up, sawdust in his hair, smiling like the world was a joke only he understood. I looked at it whenever the house felt too empty. Now a white ceramic vase stood in its place. I stood there for a few seconds, soup in one hand, library bag in the other, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "Lauren," I called. She stepped out of the kitchen, towel over her shoulder. "Oh, you are home. Where is Thomas's picture?" Her face remained calm. That was one of Lauren's talents. She could make any offense look like a simple misunderstanding. "I shifted a few things," she said. The shelf looked crowded. But it was not crowded. "Well, maybe not to you," she laughed, saying it looked too heavy. I put the photo in the hallway. I walked out there. It was not there. Lauren followed me, her footsteps quiet on the floor. "Maybe the entry table," she offered. I was trying different spots. The entry table held a key bowl, a candle, and some mail. No Thomas. I turned around to face her. "Where is it, Lauren?" For the first time, she looked annoyed. "Maria, I didn't throw it away. It is probably in one of the boxes in the den." One of the boxes. My chest tightened at those words. I hurried to the den and found 3 cardboard boxes stacked by the closet. Inside the first were old magazines, 2 framed cross stitches, and the quilt Thomas's mother had made for our wedding. Inside the second were my recipe cards, a ceramic angel Daniel painted in 3rd grade, and family photos wrapped in newspaper. Thomas's workshop picture was in the 3rd box, face down. I picked it up gently, brushing dust from the glass. Behind me, Lauren sighed. I was going to organize those later. "These are not clutter," I said. "I didn't say they were clutter. You put them in a box because the house needs breathing room." Her voice sharpened, then softened when she saw Daniel coming down the stairs. "I am just trying to help," she said. Daniel looked from Lauren to me, then at the photo in my hands. "What happened?" he asked. "Your father's picture was boxed up," I said. He rubbed his neck, already tired of the conversation before it even started. "Mom." That single word told me exactly where he stood. And it wasn't beside me. Somewhere in the middle, which meant nowhere at all. "Daniel," I said softly. "This is your father." "I know that." "Then why look at me like I am being difficult?" His face tightened. "No one said that." Lauren crossed her arms. "I am not trying to erase anyone, but we cannot live in a museum forever." "A museum?" That word stung like a slap. I looked around the room Thomas and I filled over 40 years. The bookshelf he built. The lamp we bought at a yard sale when Daniel was 10. The old clock Thomas fixed 3 times because I loved its chime. To Lauren, it was a museum. To me, it was proof of a life built slowly, faithfully, with love. Daniel stepped closer. "Mom, Lauren is just trying to make the place feel fresh." Fresh. There was that word again. I wanted to ask when his father became stale to him. I wanted to ask if he remembered Thomas teaching him to ride a bike in our driveway. Thomas staying up all night when he had the flu. Thomas working overtime to pay for his college textbooks. But I did not ask. Some questions are too painful when you already know the answer. After that day, the changes came faster. Lauren removed our framed family photo from the mantel because she said the frame was outdated. She replaced it with a round mirror that reflected the room but remembered nothing. She took down the small wooden cross Thomas carved after his first cancer treatment, hiding it away in a drawer. She moved his old work jacket from the back door hook to a plastic storage bin in the garage. When I objected, she always had an excuse. It was collecting dust. "It made the space feel sad," she said. "I thought it might help you heal." That was the cruelest part. She dressed every wound as medicine. One Saturday morning, I found her in the garage with Daniel, standing beside Thomas's workbench. It still held his old measuring tape, jars of nails, and the pencil marks he made along the edge over the years. I had not touched it since he died. Not because I worshipped it, as Lauren would claim, but because some places become sacred after loss. Lauren held a clipboard. Daniel looked uncomfortable. "What are you doing?" I asked. Lauren turned quickly. "Just seeing what can be cleared out." Cleared out. This garage has so much unused space, Maria. We can make it functional. "It is functional," I snapped. She glanced at the workbench. "For whom?" The question was so cold, so casually cruel, that I could not answer at first. Daniel stepped in. "Mom, we were just talking. Maybe we could donate some tools. Dad's tools. I do not use them," he said. But they were his. Lauren sighed. "Maria, with respect, keeping everything Thomas ever touched is not healthy. People usually say, with respect, right before they show absolutely none." I walked to the workbench and placed my hand on the worn wood. "This stays." Lauren's jaw tightened. "Fine." But the way she said it told me nothing was. That evening, I noticed Daniel avoiding my eyes at dinner. Emma chattered about school, showing me a drawing she made of our house with a big red tree in front. She had drawn 4 people standing beside it: herself, Daniel, Lauren, and me. Then she added a small figure in the sky. "Who is that, sweetheart?" I asked. "Grandpa Thomas," Emma said proudly. "He is watching the house." Lauren's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Daniel looked down at his plate. I smiled at Emma, though my throat ached. "That is beautiful." Lauren set her fork down. "Emma, we talked about this." Emma's smile faded. "About what? About focusing on people who are actually here?" The room went dead silent. I looked at Daniel, waiting. He said nothing. Emma lowered her crayon. But Grandma says Grandpa helped build the house. Lauren's voice grew tight. Grandma talks about Grandpa a lot. I set my napkin down. Because he was part of this family. No one is denying that, Lauren said. But there is a difference between remembering someone and keeping everyone trapped in the past. I felt heat rising in my face, but I kept my voice steady. Emma is allowed to know her grandfather. She barely remembers him. Then we remember him for her. Lauren smiled, but her eyes were hard. Or maybe we let her form memories that are not centered around grief. Daniel finally spoke. Can we not do this at dinner? I looked at my son. Do what? He swallowed. Argue. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because Daniel always thought silence meant peace. Even as a boy, he hated raised voices, tension, and choosing sides. But refusing to choose is still a choice when someone is being hurt. Later, after Emma fell asleep, I went downstairs for water and heard Lauren speaking in the living room. She was on the phone. No, she has not agreed yet, she said softly. But the house is in a great area. Older, yes, but updated, it could sell beautifully. I froze near the kitchen doorway. A pause. Then Lauren laughed under her breath. Daniel is working on her. She is sentimental, that is all. Once she realizes it is too much house for one old woman, everything will be easier. One old woman. My hand tightened around the glass. I heard papers rustling. Yes, Lauren continued, I would like to get a rough estimate. Nothing official yet, just enough to know what we are dealing with. I backed away before she could see me. In the hallway, I found Daniel standing near the stairs. He had heard her. I knew by his face. Daniel, I whispered, what is she doing? He looked toward the living room, then back at me. Mom, do not overreact. That was when something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not completely, just enough for me to realize my son knew far more than he had admitted. You knew she was talking to a realtor. He closed his eyes briefly. It is just information. It is my home. I know. Do you? He did not answer. From the living room, Lauren's voice floated through the house, calm and confident, already imagining a sale sign in my yard, measuring my life in market value. I walked upstairs without another word. That night, I took Thomas's workshop photograph from the box and placed it back on the bookshelf. Then I stood in the dark living room and looked at his face. I am trying, Tom, I whispered. But they are making it hard. Outside, the maple tree moved gently in the wind, its branches brushing the window like fingers. And for the first time since Thomas died, my home no longer felt like it was listening. It was warning me. The dinner that broke something inside me began with his favorite meal, pot roast with carrots, mashed potatoes with too much butter, green beans cooked the way he liked them, and apple pie cooling on the counter. I had not planned it as a statement. At least, that was what I told myself as I stood there tying my apron. But grief has its own calendar. That day would have been Thomas's 71st birthday. I did not announce it. I did not expect a party, candles, or speeches. I only wanted to cook the meal he loved and sit at the table where he once bowed his head before dinner, his hand finding mine beneath the tablecloth. Emma came into the kitchen first. "Grandma, it smells so good," she said, climbing onto a chair. I smiled. Your grandpa loved this meal. Her eyes brightened. Grandpa Thomas? Yes, sweetheart. Did he eat a lot? I laughed softly. More than he admitted. Emma giggled, and for a moment, the kitchen felt warm. Then Lauren walked in. She looked at the pot roast, at me, then at Emma. Her smile was tight. "Oh," she said, "we are doing this tonight." I wiped my hands on a towel. Doing what? Lauren opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of sparkling water. Nothing. I just did not realize dinner had a theme. It does not have a theme, I said. It is just dinner. But she knew. Somehow she knew. Daniel came home 20 minutes later, tired from work, loosening his tie as he stepped through the back door. He kissed Emma's head, kissed Lauren's cheek, and gave me a quick hug. "Smells like Dad's birthday dinner," he said. For 1 second, I saw my son again. Not Lauren's husband. Not the man avoiding my eyes. My son. The boy who used to sneak carrots from the pan and ask his father if birthdays meant extra pie. "Yes," I said quietly. "I suppose it does." Daniel's face softened. I forgot what day it was. Lauren set plates on the table harder than necessary. "Well, we have all been busy." No one answered. We sat down at 6:30. The sun was low outside, spilling orange light across the floor. Emma sat beside me, swinging her feet. Daniel sat across from me. Lauren sat at the end of the table where Thomas used to sit. I noticed it immediately. I tried not to. That chair had not belonged to Thomas in any legal sense. It was wood and cushion, nothing more. After 42 years of marriage, some places keep a person's shape long after they leave us. Lauren unfolded her napkin with a smile. "This looks lovely, Maria. Thank you." Daniel served Emma first, then Lauren, then himself. I watched his hands. They looked so much like Thomas's hands, though softer, less scarred. Seeing that hurt me in a way I could not explain. For a few minutes, though, dinner felt peaceful. Emma chatted away about a spelling test. Daniel asked her what words she had learned, while Lauren corrected her posture twice. I just poured gravy over my potatoes and listened. Then Emma pointed her fork toward the empty wall next to the china cabinet. "Grandma, wasn't there a picture there before?" My heart tightened instantly. Lauren's eyes lifted slowly. "Yes," I said. "There was." "Was it Grandpa Thomas?" "Yes." "Where did it go?" Lauren took a slow sip of her water. "It was moved, Emma." "Why?" "Because not every wall needs a dead person on it." The dining room went completely silent. Daniel's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Emma looked confused at first, then deeply hurt. I felt the blood rush from my face, but kept my voice steady. "Lauren." She looked at me as if I were the one acting out. "What?" "That was cruel." "No, Maria. Cruel is keeping a child surrounded by grief she doesn't even understand." Emma's eyes welled with tears. "I understand Grandpa was Grandma's husband," Lauren snapped at her. "Emma, don't talk back." "She wasn't talking back," I said. "She was just telling the truth." Daniel let out a sigh. "Can we please not do this tonight?" I looked at him. "Tonight is exactly why this matters." Lauren set down her glass. "There it is. I knew this was about Thomas. It is his birthday." "And he is gone," Lauren said. The words crashed through the room like thunder. Emma flinched and Daniel closed his eyes. Beneath the table, I gripped my napkin. Lauren kept going. her voice low and ice cold. I am sorry he passed, truly. But this house cannot keep revolving around a man who is gone. I stared at her in disbelief. This house exists because of that man, and now other people live in it, she insisted. Your son lives here. Your granddaughter lives here. I live here. At some point, Maria, you must stop making everyone tiptoe around your memories. But my memories are not dangerous. They are suffocating. That word hung in the air. Suffocating. I thought of Thomas, struggling to breathe during those final, painful weeks. I remembered sitting by his side at night, counting the endless seconds between breaths, terrified each one was his last. He still tried to smile when I fixed his blankets, and now his very memory was labeled suffocating at his own dinner table. Finally, Daniel spoke up. Lauren, maybe that's enough. No stop, no apologize, just maybe. Lauren stared back at him in sheer disbelief. I'm the only one saying what everyone else is afraid to say. No, I said quietly. You are saying what only you believe. Her eyes snapped right back to me. I had never stood up to her so directly. I could tell she despised it. You think I'm the villain because I want us to move forward? She sneered. But Daniel is exhausted. Emma is confused. And you, Maria, are clinging to the past like it owes you something. I swallowed the lump in my throat. The past gave me love, loyalty, a home, and a husband who respected me. Lauren's mouth tightened. And what has clinging to it given you today? Before I could speak, Emma whispered, Grandma still has us. My sweet girl, her tiny voice held more true kindness than anything else said at that table tonight. I reached for her hand. Lauren noticed and instantly leaned forward. Emma, go upstairs. Emma froze. But I'm eating right now. Daniel looked up. Lauren. I said now. Emma's lip trembled. She slid from her chair and ran upstairs, her little feet thudding on the wooden steps. I turned to Daniel. You let her talk to your daughter like that? Daniel looked torn, utterly weak. Mom, please. That word again. Please. As if I were the problem, because I refused to suffer in silence. Lauren pushed her chair back. I'm tired of being treated like an outsider in a house I help run. You've lived here less than a year, I countered. And in that year, I've cooked, cleaned, organized, and paid bills. You paid for groceries twice. Her face flushed red. Daniel looked deeply embarrassed, but he couldn't deny it. Lauren's voice dropped to a cold hiss. You know what your problem is, Maria? You don't want a family. You just want an audience for your grief. I stood up slowly. My old knees ached, but I stood tall. Don't speak to me about my grief as if it's a performance, I said. You have no idea what it means to wash the last coffee cup your husband ever touched. You have no clue what it is to sleep beside an empty pillow after 42 years. You have absolutely no idea what it takes to keep breathing just because your child and grandchild still need you here. For a second, Lauren was speechless. Then she flashed a small, vicious smile. Then maybe act like they actually need you, she sneered, instead of pretending Thomas was the only one who ever mattered. Daniel whispered, Lauren, stop. But the damage was done. Words had been thrown out that could never be taken back. I stared at my son. Do you agree with her? His face turned pale. Mom, do you? He just stared down at his empty plate. His silence was all the answer I needed. I picked up my plate and walked to the sink. My hands shook terribly, but I wouldn't let them see me break down. Behind me, Lauren said, "See, this is what I mean. Everything becomes a drama." I slowly rinsed my plate under the running water. Steam rose against my cheeks. I focused on the warmth rather than the crushing pain behind my eyes. Minutes later, Daniel stepped into the kitchen. "Mom," he muttered softly, "she didn't mean it like that." I shut off the tap. She meant every single word. She's just stressed out. So am I. He rubbed his forehead tiredly. You need to understand, Lauren feels like there is no room for her. I glanced at the empty chair where she had sat in Thomas's place, calling him suffocating. There was plenty of room for her, I said. She just wanted his space too. Daniel had nothing left to say. Later, once they all went upstairs, I found Emma on the bottom step in her pajamas, clutching something tightly to her chest. "Grandma," she whispered. I sat right beside her. "What are you doing awake?" Her eyes were terribly red. "Mommy said I shouldn't ask about Grandpa anymore," Emma said, her voice small. My heart clenched as she continued. "She said it makes you sad, and I should stop because he's gone." I pulled her gently into my arms. "You are never wrong for asking about someone who loved this family," I whispered as she sniffled. "Did Grandpa love me?" she asked. I closed my eyes, remembering. Thomas had only held Emma a few times before he got too sick, but each time he looked at her like she was a miracle. "Yes," I whispered. "More than you know." Emma leaned heavily against me. "Then I don't want to forget him." I kissed the top of her head. In that quiet moment, a terrifying realization washed over me. Lauren wasn't just taking Thomas off our walls. She was trying to erase him from Emma's heart. Right then, my grief morphed into something else. It was no longer just sorrow. It was fierce protection. I barely slept after Thomas's birthday dinner. The house felt quiet, but far from peaceful. There is a difference. Peace is soft, but this quiet was razor sharp. That night, every creak in the floorboards sounded like a warning. Every whisper of wind against the glass made me snap my eyes open. I lay there in the dark, staring blankly at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of Daniel and Lauren moving upstairs. A drawer sliding shut, running water, a slammed door, and then absolute silence. On my nightstand sat a small framed photo of Thomas and me at Lake Erie. It was taken during the summer Daniel turned 12. He had his arm draped over my shoulders, and I was laughing at some joke of his. I can't remember the words anymore, but I remember the feeling. Safe, loved, chosen. I gently traced the frame with my fingertips. "What would you do, Tom?" I whispered to the dark. Of course, the empty room offered no answer. Around midnight, I finally drifted into a fragile, restless sleep. Then a noise jolted me awake, a quiet scraping sound, something being dragged. My eyes snapped open. For a few seconds, I lay frozen, wondering if I had dreamed it. Then it came again, a soft thud downstairs, followed by the faint creak of the back door opening. My heart started racing. I sat up slowly. The clock glowing on my nightstand read 12:47. At my age, you know the sounds of your house like the voices of people you love. I knew the difference between settling pipes and footsteps. I knew that back door's stiff hinge. I knew the sound of someone trying to sneak around. I threw on my robe and slipped on my slippers. The hallway was dark, saved only by the nightlight near Emma's bedroom. Her door was slightly ajar. I stopped to look inside. She was fast asleep, cuddling a stuffed rabbit, her face completely peaceful in the warm glow. I kept moving. Halfway down the stairs, I spotted movement through the kitchen window. Lauren. She was standing outside by the trash cans, shivering in a long sweater over her pajamas. Her hair was tied up, and she carried a cardboard box resting against her hip. The yard was dark, but the moonlight let me watch as she lifted the heavy trash bin lid. Then she tilted the box. Something heavy slid inside. I gasped, my chest tightening. She shot a quick glance back at the house. I retreated into the dark stairwell, squeezing the wooden handrail until my knuckles ached. She shut the bin, dusting off her hands like she'd just finished some dirty chore, and headed back inside. I slipped quietly into the narrow hallway by the laundry room. Lauren stepped into the kitchen, locked the door behind her, and paused. In the silence, I could actually hear her breathing. She started walking toward the stairs and stopped right at the bottom step. My heart stopped. I thought she saw me. Then Daniel called out from upstairs, his voice low and tired. "Lauren?" "I'm coming," she called back. Her voice sounded totally normal, almost bored, as if she hadn't just thrown a piece of my life into the freezing cold. Once she headed upstairs and I heard their bedroom door click shut, I ran to the kitchen, unlocked the back door, and slipped outside. The freezing night air cut right through my robe. The grass felt damp under my thin slippers. The trash bins stood there by the garage, looking ugly in the moonlight. I lifted the lid. At first, all I could see was a black trash bag, messy coffee grounds from a split filter, paper towels, and kitchen scraps. Then, the corner of a wooden frame caught my eye. My hands went completely numb. I reached deep inside and pulled it out. Our wedding photograph. The glass was shattered, a jagged silver crack splitting Thomas's beautiful face right down the middle. A dark, ugly stain ruined the bottom of my wedding dress in the photo. I couldn't even breathe. "No," I choked out. I dug deeper into the trash. There lay our 25th anniversary photo album, its spine completely bent. There were scattered pictures of Thomas cradling Daniel as a tiny baby. Thomas standing proudly next to the maple tree. Thomas in his beloved workshop. Thomas resting in his favorite chair with baby Emma sleeping soundly on his chest. And then I saw the letters. Letters my husband wrote me when he worked away from home early in our marriage. The ones I'd carefully tied with blue ribbon and kept hidden in the cedar box in my closet. Lauren had violated my space. She went into my bedroom. Not just the living room shelves, my sanctuary, my private, sacred memories. A sound escaped my throat, but it wasn't a sob. It was low, guttural, almost primal. I slammed my hand over my mouth, terrified of waking sweet Emma. I refused to give Lauren the twisted pleasure of seeing me fall apart. One after another, I carefully salvaged the pictures from the garbage. Damp coffee grounds coated Thomas's smiling face. Broken eggshells clung to our anniversary portrait. One precious letter was ripped clean down the middle. Another was soaked and barely legible. I gathered everything, rushed to the porch table, and laid them out under the dim glow of the kitchen window. My hands trembled so violently that I dropped the cracked wedding frame twice before setting it down. Suddenly, voices drifted from the upstairs bedroom. The window directly above me was slightly open. Lauren's cold voice cut through the dark. "She needs to stop worshiping a dead man." I froze. Daniel mumbled a reply, but he was too quiet to hear. Lauren snapped back, her voice sharper. "No, Daniel, I am dead serious." I heard her snapping that it wasn't normal. His face was in every room. Every conversation led back to him. And Emma was acting like she remembered him. Daniel just muttered a weak reply. Then I heard Lauren say, "Your mother is using grief to control this house." Standing in the freezing cold, holding my husband's ruined pictures, I waited for my son to stand up for me. I wanted him to say, "That's my father," or "You had no right." I waited for him to say anything that sounded like love. Instead, he just sighed and said, "Lauren, just come to bed." That was it. Just come to bed. No stop, no apologize, no, "What did you do?" The silence that followed was worse than their words. Something inside me went cold and still. Clutching the ruined photos and letters tightly against my chest, I slipped back inside and quietly locked the door behind me. I laid everything out on the kitchen table, took a clean towel, and slowly wiped each photo. I didn't rush. Sometimes anger burns hot, but mine didn't. My anger turned cold and crystal clear. Wiping coffee grounds from my late husband's face, I felt less like a grieving widow and more like the survivor he trusted me to be. At 1:23 in the morning, I reached into the drawer right beside the stove. I pulled out the old paper address book I kept, despite my son always teasing me for not saving contacts on my phone. Robert Hayes, our family attorney, and Thomas's dear friend. He sat at our dining table 3 months before my husband died, putting everything in order. I stared at his number. It was late, way too late to call a respectable man or handle legal business. Too late for anything except a true emergency. Then, I looked down at our cracked wedding picture. This was an emergency. I dialed. He picked up on the 5th ring, his voice heavy with sleep. "Hello, Robert," I whispered, my voice breaking on his name. Silence stretched for a second. Then, suddenly fully awake, he asked, "Maria, what happened?" Looking at the ruined letters and bent photos on the table, at the history she tried to discard, I managed to say, "She went through my things." She threw Thomas's pictures in the garbage. Robert was quiet for a beat. When he spoke, he sounded cautious. "Lauren did that? Is Daniel there?" "He knows what she did." My silence said everything. Robert let out a long breath. "Maria, are you safe?" "I'm safe," I replied, "but I am done." "What do you need me to do?" Closing my eyes, I pictured Thomas in his hospital bed, holding my hand, making me promise. "Promise me you won't let them push you out of our home." "I need you here tomorrow morning," I told Robert. "Bring the deed, the will, everything." Robert didn't ask why. He already understood. "Maria," he said softly, "are you sure about this?" I turned my gaze toward the staircase. Upstairs slept my own son, who forgot how to defend his father. Upstairs slept the woman who mistook my profound grief for absolute weakness. And down the hall slept my sweet granddaughter, who deserved to know her roots. I picked up the wedding picture, tracing my finger over Thomas's cracked face. "Yes," I said. "Tomorrow morning she is leaving." By 6 the next morning I was fully dressed. No housecoat, no soft cardigan that I usually wore to make breakfast. I dressed the way I used to when Thomas and I had serious banking to do or went to church, to show that being kind does not mean being weak. Wearing a navy blouse, gray slacks, my pearls, and simple black shoes, I finally walked downstairs. The kitchen carried a faint scent of old coffee and chilly night air. The cleaned letters and photos remained spread across the table, just as I had left them. Some were still badly creased, others ruined forever. Our wedding photograph sat right in the middle, the fractured glass catching the pale morning light. I brewed some coffee, not because I wanted to drink it, but because my hands needed a distraction, while my heart braced for a confrontation that would alter our family forever. Around 6:40, sweet Emma came downstairs in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Grandma," she whispered, "why are you all dressed up?" I turned from the kitchen counter and smiled gently. "Good morning, sweetheart." She saw the table and froze. "Are those Grandpa's pictures?" "Yes," I said. Her little face fell. Kids notice far more than we care to admit. She quietly approached the table and touched the cracked frame of our wedding picture. "What happened?" I knelt down beside her. "Someone made a very bad choice," I said. Her eyes welled with tears. "Was it Mommy?" I hesitated before replying. I refused to lie, but I wouldn't use my granddaughter as a weapon either. Gently brushing a stray curl from her cheek, I said, "The grown-ups need to talk today. I want you to have breakfast in the den, okay? Is Mommy in trouble?" Taking a deep breath, I answered, "Mommy needs to learn that hurting others has consequences." Emma glanced nervously toward the stairs. "Are you mad?" "Yes," I admitted softly. "But I still love you very much." She threw her arms around my neck. Holding her tight, my resolve nearly crumbled. Not because of Lauren or Daniel, but because this innocent child was trapped in a storm she never asked for. I knew that every single choice I made from now on would define how she understood love and respect. Around 7:15, my son walked down first. He stopped in his tracks, staring at me, then at the table. His face paled. "Mom," he muttered. I poured coffee and set the mug down. "Sit, Daniel." He remained standing. "Where is Lauren? Still upstairs? What's going on?" "You know exactly what this is," I said, as he stared at the ruined photos. He looked at our wedding photo, the letters, and a picture of Thomas holding him as an infant. A flash of deep shame crossed his face. But shame isn't the same as courage. "Mom," he whispered, "I know last night was upsetting." "Upsetting?" I retorted. He winced as I took a step closer. "Daniel, your wife dug through my personal belongings, stole your father's love letters, took your childhood pictures, and tossed them in the trash with kitchen garbage." His jaw tightened. "I didn't know about the letters." "But you knew enough," I said. He looked away, and that was answer enough. Before I could speak, Lauren descended the stairs in a white robe, carrying herself with the smug confidence of someone looking for a fight. She really believed she could win. Her eyes drifted from Daniel to me, then down to the table. For a split second, her mask slipped. Not guilt, just annoyance. "You went through the trash?" she asked. The sheer nerve of her question almost made me laugh. "No, Lauren," I said. "I just saved what you stole from my room and threw in the garbage." She crossed her arms. "I didn't steal anything. I removed things that were creating an unhealthy environment." Daniel closed his eyes. I studied her face. "You went into my bedroom." "I was cleaning." "You opened my cedar chest." "You leave things everywhere, Maria. This house is a disaster." "My letters from Thomas were never yours to manage." Lauren's face turned to stone. "You are being so dramatic." "It is dramatic," I whispered. "You threw my husband in the trash," she scoffed. I threw away paper. The room went dead silent. Even Daniel stared at her. I gripped the back of the chair to keep from shaking. "Pack your things." Lauren blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Daniel stepped closer. "Mom, wait." "No." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Lauren is leaving today." She stared at me, letting out a sharp, ugly laugh. "You can't be serious." "I am completely serious." "This is Daniel's home, too." "No," I said, "it is not." Her smirk returned, but it was forced. "Maria, don't embarrass yourself. Daniel is your son. We live here. You invited us." "I invited you to stay temporarily. I didn't invite you to erase my husband, violate my privacy, or plot to sell a house that isn't yours." Daniel's head snapped up. "Mom!" Lauren's eyes flared with anger. "So now you're eavesdropping on my calls?" I heard enough. "You heard what you wanted to hear." "I heard you call me an old woman." Daniel looked at her, but she didn't deny it. She just lifted her chin. "Maybe because that's exactly how you're acting. Alone in this giant house, clinging to dead memories instead of caring about what makes sense for the living." I felt the words hit me, but they didn't shake me. Not today. "The living," I replied, "don't get to build their future by trampling on a widow's grief." Lauren took a step closer. "You think you can just throw me out?" "Yes." "This is marital property." I looked directly at Daniel. "Did you tell her that?" He swallowed hard. "I might have said someday." "Someday is not today." Lauren gestured sharply toward the front hallway. "Daniel is your only child. This house will belong to him eventually. That means it belongs to our family's future." "No," I said. "It means you were counting on my death before I was even done living." Her face flushed red. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" My voice shook for the very first time. "You stood in my home, slept under my roof, let me cook and care for your child. And then you threw my husband into the garbage because his memory stood in your way." Daniel whispered, "Mom, please." I turned my eyes to him. "Do not please me today, Daniel. Not today." A knock echoed at the front door. Lauren glanced over, startled. I stood completely still. Daniel looked confused. "Who's that?" "Someone who should have been here a long time ago." I walked over and opened the door. Robert Hayes was standing on the porch in a dark suit, holding a leather portfolio. He was in his late 60s, with silver hair and tired, gentle eyes. He had been Thomas's closest friend for nearly 30 years. He sat right beside me at the funeral. He had even helped carry Thomas's casket. "Maria," he murmured. "Thank you for coming, Robert," I replied. He stepped inside, looking toward the kitchen. The moment he saw the photographs scattered across the table, His jaw tightened. Lauren instantly straightened up. "Who is this?" Robert looked her dead in the eye. "Robert Hayes, Mrs. Griffin's attorney." She let out a dry laugh. "An attorney? This is ridiculous." Robert didn't smile. "I assure you, Mrs. Griffin's rights are anything but ridiculous." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Mr. Hayes, this is a family matter." Robert turned to him. "Family matters often become legal issues when people cross boundaries." Lauren's smug confidence flickered. I walked back to the table and stood right beside my wedding photo with Thomas. "Robert," I said, "please explain to Lauren who owns this house." She rolled her eyes. "We know Maria owns it, technically." "No," Robert countered, opening his folder. "Not technically. Entirely." The energy in the room shifted instantly. I felt it. Lauren's shoulders went rigid. Daniel stared at the file. Robert pulled out several documents and placed them neatly on the table, careful to avoid the photographs. "The deed to this property is solely in Maria Griffin's name," he said. "Thomas transferred his entire interest before he passed. The will also confirms Daniel has no ownership claim, no authority here, and absolutely no legal right to sell, lease, or control this property while Maria is alive." Lauren's mouth opened, then snapped shut. Daniel looked like the floor had just been ripped out from under him. I looked at my son. Even through my anger, the pain ran deep. A mother's heart doesn't stop breaking just because she finally stands her ground. Lauren recovered first. "That doesn't change the fact that we live here." Robert nodded calmly. "You've been permitted to stay here solely by Maria's consent. And consent can be withdrawn." Her voice grew sharp. "You can't just throw a mother and child out." I cut in before Robert could answer. "Emma is not being put out. She will be safe. This is about you." Lauren glared at Daniel. "Say something." Daniel looked at me, pleading. "Mom, we need time." "You had time," I said, "and you used it to let your wife throw your father out of this home." His eyes welled with tears, but I couldn't comfort him. "Not yet." Lauren gestured wildly at the table. "All this drama over some old photos?" Robert's expression turned icy. "Mrs. Griffin, I'd strongly advise you to stop minimizing what you did." She whirled on him. "And I advise you to stay out of my family." Robert slowly closed his folder. "I am here because Maria asked me to be, and because Thomas made me promise before he died that I'd protect her if anyone ever tried to force her out of this home." Those words hit Daniel the hardest. He looked at me, devastated. "Dad said that?" I slowly nodded. I saw Daniel's face crumble for a second before he masked it. Lauren whispered, "This is insane." "No," I said. "This is the first sane morning we have had in months." I held our cracked wedding photo tight against my chest. "Lauren, you are going to pack whatever belongs to you. You leave my home today. If you need to find a place, call your parents, call a friend, or a hotel, but you will not sleep under my roof again." Her eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this." I looked at the woman who mistook my silence for surrender. "No," I said. "I regret not doing it sooner." After Robert spoke, nobody moved. My kitchen suddenly felt far too small for the truth that had just forced its way inside. Thin gold lines of morning light crept through the curtains, illuminating the ruined photos on my table, the coffee mugs, the leather folder, Lauren's pale face, and my son's downcast eyes. Lauren was the first to recover. "This is absurd," she said, though her voice had lost most of its usual sharpness. "Daniel is her son," Lauren insisted. Robert remained calm. "Yes, he is her only son." "So you're telling me he has no rights here?" "I am telling you, he has no ownership rights while Maria Griffin is alive," Robert said. Lauren let out a bitter laugh. "That is not how families work." "No," I said quietly. "That is how property works." Her eyes cut toward me. I had never seen her look at me like that before. She wasn't irritated or condescending now. She was afraid. It was buried under anger, but I saw it clearly. Lauren had built her plans assuming I was old, sentimental, and legally uninformed. Now the floor beneath that assumption was cracking. My son finally sat down at the table, staring at the deed like it was in a foreign language. "Mom," he asked, "Dad transferred the house to you?" "Yes." "When?" "Before he died," his voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him in silence for a long moment, because I didn't think my son needed a warning that his mother's home belonged to her. That completely silenced him. Robert adjusted his glasses, sliding a document forward. "Thomas was very clear," he said. "He wanted Maria protected. The deed was updated. The estate documents were revised, and the will confirms that Daniel's inheritance, if any, is up to Maria's decisions after her passing." Lauren's face tightened at those words. "If any?" she repeated. "So now she is threatening to cut Daniel out?" Robert looked at her. "Nobody said that." "You implied it." "I stated a legal fact." Lauren turned to my son. "Are you hearing this? Your own mother is sitting here with a lawyer, treating you like a stranger." Daniel rubbed both hands over his exhausted face. "Lauren, stop." "No, I won't stop." She pointed at the photographs. "This entire thing is just emotional manipulation." She lays out old pictures, calls a lawyer, and suddenly we are criminals. My fingers curled tightly against the back of my chair. "You went into my bedroom." Lauren ignored me. "You threw away my private letters?" I pressed. She looked at Robert. "Is throwing away paper illegal now?" Robert's voice turned ice cold. "Entering someone's private space, removing personal property, and destroying or discarding it without permission," Robert explained. "And trying to pressure an elderly homeowner regarding property decisions can become very serious, depending on the circumstances." Lauren's lips parted. Daniel looked up sharply. "Pressure?" Robert turned to him. "Maria told me she overheard discussions about selling her home." My son's face fell. Lauren spoke quickly. "That was exploratory. There's nothing wrong with knowing the value of an asset." "My home is not your asset," I said. She snapped back. "It's this family's biggest asset." There it was, the plain, ugly truth. Not a home, but an asset. Not memories, but value. Not Thomas's life's work, just opportunity. I looked at my son. "Is that what you think too?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Mom, I never wanted to hurt you." "That is not what I asked." His eyes began to glisten. "I thought if the house became too much, we could decide together." "Together," I repeated. But you were already talking to a realtor behind my back. Lauren shot him a warning look. Daniel looked down. Robert flipped to another page in his folder. Maria, you mentioned a name last night. Do you remember the realtor? I nodded. I heard Lauren say she wanted an estimate, but I didn't hear the name. Robert looked at Lauren. Would you like to clarify? Lauren folded her arms. No, Daniel whispered. It was Carter Bloom. Lauren whipped around. Daniel? He looked totally exhausted. Why hide what she already knows? My stomach sank. You knew his name? Daniel's face twisted with shame. Lauren reached out first, he whispered. Then Carter called me because he needed to speak with a family member. A family member? I asked. Not the owner? I told him nothing was official, Daniel said. But you spoke to him. Yes. And you didn't tell me? He closed his eyes. No. That quiet word hurt far more than Lauren's shouting. She was just an outsider trying to steal what wasn't hers. But Daniel was my own son. He had watched his father sand those porch rails, plant that maple tree, and build those bookshelves. My son knew this house wasn't just wood and brick. Yet, he still let someone measure it for sale behind my back. Lauren threw her hands up. We were trying to plan responsibly. Daniel and I are drowning, Maria. Do you understand that? Drowning. Daniel's head snapped toward her. Lauren, stop. I went completely still. Drowning? Lauren realized too late what she'd just revealed. Robert looked from Lauren to my son. Financially? Daniel said nothing, while Lauren's cheeks flushed. That is private. So are my letters, I replied. Her mouth tightened. I turned to my son. Daniel, what does she mean? He stared at the table. Daniel? He took a shaky breath. We have debt. How much? Lauren snapped. That's none of your business. I looked at her. You made it my business when you tried to sell my home to pay it off, Daniel whispered. A lot. The words drained him completely. I sat down slowly as my knees went weak. From what? Daniel looked at Lauren, then back at me. Some investments, credit cards, a business course Lauren wanted, a rental property deal that fell through. A rental property deal, I repeated. Lauren lifted her chin, claiming it was a real opportunity. It was a disaster, Daniel muttered. Her eyes flashed. You agreed because you said we would double our money, she snapped. And you said your mother would help if we needed breathing room. The silence that followed was absolute. I stared at Daniel. He looked like a little boy again, caught with something broken in his hands. Is that true? I asked. He couldn't meet my eyes. I whispered, You knew I would never let Emma suffer. I pressed a hand to my aching chest. Some betrayals come with screaming and slammed doors. Others arrive quietly, disguised as simple assumptions. My son had not only failed to protect me, he had used my love as collateral. Lauren stepped forward, sensing weakness. Maria, nobody wanted to force you, Lauren said. But look at reality. You are one person in a 4-bedroom house. We are a young family trying to survive, Lauren argued. Would it be so terrible to sell, pay off debt, and move somewhere easier? Easier for whom? I asked. For all of us. No, I said. For you. Daniel whispered. Mom, I was going to tell you. After the appraisal, after the listing, after Lauren removed every trace of Dad, so it looked less inconvenient to buyers. He flinched. Lauren's voice rose. That is unfair. Unfair? I asked. I stood up, anger giving strength to my legs. Unfair is a woman giving you shelter, only to receive disrespect in return. Unfair is a grandmother watching her granddaughter learn to hide her love, just because it makes adults uncomfortable. Unfair is a widow finding her husband's face buried in coffee grounds while her son sleeps upstairs. Daniel covered his mouth. Lauren looked away first. Robert spoke gently. Maria, you do not need to justify your decision. But I had to, not for Lauren, but for Daniel, for the boy he was, and the man he could still become if he faced what he allowed. Your father knew this would happen, I said. Daniel looked up, tears in his eyes. He knew grief makes us vulnerable. He knew I would give too much if someone I loved asked. That is why he protected me legally when I could not protect myself emotionally. Daniel's face twisted. Dad thought I would take the house? No, I said softly. I think your father worried you might let someone else try. Lauren scoffed, but I could see the fear in her eyes. So that is it, Lauren scoffed. I am the villain, and Daniel is the weak son. I looked at her. You are responsible for what you did. Daniel is responsible for what he allowed. Robert stacked the papers neatly. Lauren, Maria has withdrawn her permission for you to live here. I suggest you start making arrangements. Her eyes narrowed. And if I refuse? Robert met her gaze. Then we proceed formally. For the first time that morning, Lauren had no comeback. Daniel stood slowly. Lauren, go pack a bag. She turned to him, utterly stunned. You are taking her side? He looked at the photographs, then at me, then at his father's cracked face. I don't know whose side I'm on, he said, his voice breaking. But I know this was wrong. Lauren stared at him like he had slapped her. I wanted to feel relief, but I just felt tired. The truth had entered my kitchen, but it had not healed anything yet. It had only exposed how much damage was hiding beneath our roof. Lauren stepped back from the table, her face hardening into something colder than anger. Fine, she muttered. But do not think this is over. I looked at the deed in Robert's file, then at Thomas's ruined letters, then at my son's bowed head. No, I said. It is not over. Deep down, I knew the worst of Lauren had yet to show itself. Lauren did not pack quietly. That would have taken humility, and humility never lived comfortably inside her. She marched upstairs with Daniel following close behind. Within minutes, I heard drawers slamming, closet doors sliding, and hangers scraping against metal rods. Then came the sound of something heavy slamming onto the floor, making the ceiling tremble. Robert stayed in the kitchen with me, keeping quiet at first. I always appreciated that about him. He understood that silence is respectful when a person's life is cracking wide open. I stood by the sink, staring out at the old maple tree. Its leaves swayed gently in the morning breeze, as if nothing had changed. But inside this house, everything had. I am sorry, Maria, Robert said at last. I shook my head. You didn't do this. No, but Thomas feared something like this would happen. I turned from the window. Did he tell you that? Robert hesitated, and that hesitation stung. He did not name Daniel, Robert said carefully. He loved his son, but he said, "Your heart gives before it questions." He wanted the paperwork strong enough to protect you from anyone mistaking your love for permission. I closed my eyes. That sounded like Thomas. Even dying, he was thinking ahead. While his own body failed him, he was building one last wall around me. From upstairs, Lauren's voice drifted down. "Are you really going to let her do this?" Daniel's reply was too soft to hear. Then Lauren shouted, "She is manipulating you with guilt." Robert looked toward the ceiling. I picked up the cracked wedding photo and set it gently aside. "She is not done." "No," he said. "I do not believe she is." A few minutes later, Lauren came down the stairs carrying a suitcase and her phone. She was dressed in jeans and a beige sweater, her hair pulled back too tightly. Daniel followed with a duffel bag, looking as if he had aged 10 years overnight. Lauren dropped her suitcase near the front door. "There," she said. "Are you satisfied?" "No," I replied, "but it is a start." Her eyes narrowed. "You know what your problem is, Maria? You think pain gives you authority over everyone else." I just stared at her, completely calm. "No, ownership gives me authority over my home. Pain only taught me to stop apologizing for it." Daniel flinched. Lauren spun toward him. "Say something." He looked from her to me. "Lauren, maybe we should stay at your parents' house for a few days." Her jaw dropped. "A few days, Daniel? She is kicking your wife out of your childhood home." "The home my father left to my mother," he said softly. For a second, I saw him waver. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was something. Lauren saw it too, panic flickering across her face before her rage pivoted. "You want the truth?" Her voice rose. "Fine, let's tell the truth." Robert stepped forward, trying to intervene. "Lauren, I'd be careful." She laughed. "Of course you'd say that. You're paid to protect her little widow act." I felt Daniel stiffen. "Don't," he muttered. Lauren ignored him entirely. "This house is wasted on her. 4 bedrooms, finished basement, huge yard. For what? So she can sit here talking to pictures?" My hands turned to ice. Daniel begged, "Lauren, stop." "No, I am done stopping." She pointed straight at me. "Do you know how many families would kill for this place? Do you know how much money is trapped in these walls while we drown in debt?" "There it is," I whispered. She glared at me. "Yes, there it is. Money, reality, life. Things you ignore because you'd rather polish dead memories than help the family who's actually alive." "Help," I echoed. "You never asked for help. You just plotted to take control." I tried to make Daniel see sense by calling a realtor because you would have said no. "Yes," I said. "I absolutely would have." Lauren threw up her hands. "Exactly. You'd rather watch your own sons struggle than give up a house you don't even need." Daniel's face twisted in pain. "Don't speak for me." She whipped around. "I've been speaking for both of us, because you never speak at all." That stung. Daniel looked down, and for once, Lauren's anger seemed deeper than just greed. It wasn't soft or innocent, but pure desperation. "You promised me things would change," she continued, her voice trembling. "You said your mother would understand. You said this house was our future." I stared at my son. He didn't deny it. My throat tightened. Daniel? He swallowed hard. I said eventually. I said it might be mine someday. And Lauren heard what she wanted, I countered. No, Lauren snapped. I heard what he was too cowardly to say. Daniel looked at her. I never told you to throw out Dad's pictures. No, you just complained about living in his shadow. Silence blanketed the room. All color drained from Daniel's face. I felt as if the air had been violently sucked from my lungs. What? I breathed. Lauren smiled bitterly, realizing she'd just found a sharper knife. Oh, your perfect son didn't tell you that part, did he? He said every time he walked into this house, he felt like Thomas Griffin was still judging him. Daniel's eyes welled up. Lauren, he said, I was just tired of being compared to a dead man. I gripped the edge of the table. Daniel stepped closer. Mom, I was upset. I didn't mean... Did you say it? I demanded. His mouth trembled. Did you? He stared at the floor. Yes. That single word shattered me from the inside out. All those years I had tried so hard never to compare them. All those times I swallowed my disappointment when he missed birthdays, skipped visits, and avoided tough conversations. I never once asked him to be Thomas. I had only hoped he would remember his father with love. Lauren saw my agony and pushed even harder. And do you know why he said it? Because you never let this house be anything but a shrine to Thomas. You made Daniel feel like a guest. Daniel shook his head. That's not fair. But it's true, isn't it? Lauren sneered. I stared at my son, waiting for him to object. He didn't. He only whispered, I didn't know how to say I felt trapped here. That was the second blow, and it didn't come from Lauren. It came from Daniel. You felt trapped, I whispered, in the very home your father built for you. Tears spilled down his cheeks. No, Mom, not like that. It's just, after he died, everything froze. You, the house, all of it. I didn't know how to reach you. You could have tried kindness. I did. No, I countered. You tried avoidance. There's a massive difference. Lauren stepped right between us. See? This is exactly what I mean. She paints you as the villain whenever you tell the truth. I glared at Lauren. You don't care about the truth. You just love using it as a weapon. Her face hardened in an instant. And you use your grief as a shield. Robert's voice sliced through the tension. Enough. Lauren whipped around to face him. Stay out of this. No, Robert replied. You've repeatedly talked about selling a property you don't even own. You've admitted to a financial motive. You've removed and damaged Maria's personal property. I strongly suggest you walk out before things get worse. Lauren glared at him, panting. Suddenly, little Emma appeared in the hallway. She was clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide with absolute terror. Daddy, she whimpered. Every single adult in the room froze. Daniel quickly wiped his tears away. Emma, honey, go back to the playroom. Are we leaving? Lauren's face softened. For a second, she looked almost human. Then she rushed to Emma and knelt down. Grandma is forcing Mommy to leave. I stepped forward immediately. Lauren, don't. Emma stared at me, terrified. Grandma? I knelt down slowly, keeping my voice as gentle as possible. This isn't your fault, sweetheart. Lauren wrapped an arm around Emma. Tell Grandma you don't want Mommy to leave. Daniel's voice turned icy. "Lauren, don't do this." She glared up at him. "Don't do what? Let our daughter speak." "You're using her." Lauren stood up, pulling Emma closer to her side. "I'm protecting my family." "No," I said, my voice shaking now. "You're hiding behind a child because the truth has nowhere else to hide." Emma started crying. That completely broke Daniel. He walked over and gently pulled Emma away from Lauren. "Go upstairs and get dressed, sweetheart. I'll be up in just a minute." Emma clung to him tightly. "Is Grandma mad at me?" I walked over and gently touched her tear-stained cheek. "Never, sweetie. Not for a single day of your life." She nodded, weeping quietly, and went upstairs. Once Emma was gone, Daniel turned to Lauren, his face hardening into an expression I had never seen before. "Do not bring Emma into this again," Daniel snapped. Lauren smirked. "So you finally found a backbone." My son flinched, but he did not look away. She gave a bitter laugh. "Fine. Keep pretending this is about some photos, but we all know what this is really about." "And what is that?" I asked. Lauren glared right at me. "You had all the power," she spat, "and you just loved watching us crawl." I shook my head. "No, Lauren, I just loved believing you were family." For once, she was silent. Daniel picked up her suitcase and set it by the door, his hands trembling. "Go to your parents' house," Daniel said. Lauren stared at him. "Are you coming?" He looked at me, then up toward the stairs where Emma had run. "I do not know," he admitted. Lauren's face twisted with rage and terror. "You will regret choosing her," she hissed. My son's voice cracked. "I am not choosing anyone. I am finally opening my eyes." Lauren snatched the handle of her suitcase. At the door, she turned around. "This house is going to bury you, Maria," she sneered. "All those precious memories. One day, they will be the only things you have left." I looked down at Thomas's damaged photo, then looked right back at her. "Memories built on love are not a grave," I told her. "But a future built on greed definitely is." Lauren threw open the door and stepped out. The heavy thud of the door echoed through the empty house. But instead of feeling relieved, I felt a storm starting to gather. Lauren had left with her bags, but she had lost her pride. And people like her always come back for that. Her departure did not feel like a victory. The house felt wounded. Her suitcase wheels had barely cleared the porch when Daniel collapsed into a chair, burying his face in both hands. Robert stood silently by the table, watching us, while I gently gathered Thomas's ruined photographs into a neat, protective pile. Outside, Lauren's car door slammed shut. A second later, the engine roared to life. And then, she was gone. For months, I had imagined that if she finally left my house, the air would feel lighter. I thought the walls would be able to breathe again. I pictured Thomas's memory settling back into place, like a framed photo returned to its hook. But that morning, the silence she left behind felt like the wreckage of a storm. Daniel looked up at me, his eyes red. "Mom." I kept quiet, not to punish him, but because I feared the raw anger that might spill out if I spoke too soon. A mother can survive almost any wound, but the ones inflicted by her own child cut deep in a completely different way. They do not just hurt, they echo. Robert cleared his throat softly. "Maria, do you want me to stay?" I looked from Daniel to the stairs where Emma had vanished. "No, I said quietly. Thank you, Robert. But I think this next conversation needs to be just between my son and me. He gave a slow nod. He packed up his folder, then lingered near me. Call me if anything changes, no matter what. I will. He placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, an old friend's silent support. Then he walked out, the front door clicking shut. Daniel and I were left entirely alone in the kitchen. For a long time, neither of us said a word. Finally, Daniel whispered, "I am sorry." I looked closely at him. He seemed so much smaller than he had just an hour before. Not physically, but his spirit was broken. His shoulders slumped, his face pale and exhausted. Beneath it all, I could still see the little boy, the sweet child who once ran to me with skinned knees and broken toys, completely trusting that his mother could fix everything. But this was a mess I could not repair. Sorry for what? I asked. He blinked in confusion. What? Tell me exactly what you are sorry for. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I watched him flounder, and that silence spoke louder than any words. He was sorry I was hurting. Sorry Lauren crossed the line. Sorry our morning had turned to chaos. But did he regret his own choices? His spineless silence while standing by a woman who treated his own father's legacy like absolute garbage? I am sorry she threw away the photos, he managed. I nodded slowly. That is a start. His expression tightened at my cold tone. Mom, please do not do that. Do what? Talk to me like I am one of your library kids. A sharp pang of hurt sliced through me. Then stop acting like a child who got caught, rather than a grown man who made choices. He flinched. I had never spoken to him like that. Not even in his wildest youth. Not when he totaled Thomas's old truck at 17, nor when he dropped out of college for a term to find himself. I had always sugar-coated the hard truths. Maybe that was always my mistake. Daniel stood up suddenly. You think I wanted any of this? I think you stood by and let it happen. That is not fair. No, I replied. What happened in my home was what was unfair. He paced frantically toward the sink, then back. You have no idea what my life has been like. You are right, I said. I do not understand how my son could let his wife call his father a dead man and still lie down beside her at night. His face fell apart. I was trying to keep my marriage together. At the expense of your mother's dignity? At the cost of everything? Suddenly, he shouted. His loud voice startled both of us. Daniel spun away, chest heaving. Do you think I am proud of this? You think I wanted to be drowning in debt? You think I wanted a bitter wife every single day? To come home feeling like a complete failure? I stood motionless as he broke down. Lauren was terrified. I was terrified. The bills kept piling up. Our investment fell apart, and the cards maxed out. Whenever I tried to talk, she told me I was not man enough to fix things. I closed my eyes. There it was. The hidden fracture beneath the surface wound. My son had not just been driven by greed. He was deeply ashamed. And secret shame can drive a person to betray those who love them most, because love feels far easier to exploit than cold judgment. But understanding a betrayal is not the same as pardoning it. You should have come to me, I whispered. He let out a harsh laugh. And say what, Mom? That I am 43 years old and broke? That I cannot protect my wife and little girl? Mom, I am not even half the man Dad was. His words hung heavily between us. I stepped closer. Thomas never wanted you to be a shadow of him. Daniel's eyes welled with tears. Everyone else did. No, I said softly. Lauren did. Your own fear did. But I never did. He stared at me, really searching my eyes. I only needed you to be honest, I whispered, and kind. His shoulders began to shake. For a moment, I wanted to cross the room and pull in close. Every maternal instinct in me reached out, but then my eyes fell on the table. The cracked wedding photo. The shredded letters that could never be whole again. I froze. Daniel wiped his wet face. What do you want me to do? I took a heavy breath. This was the confrontation I had dreaded since last night. Asking Lauren to leave was painful but straightforward. Asking my own son to leave was a completely different kind of agony. It felt like performing surgery on my own heart with a steady hand. I need you to pack a bag too, I said. He stared blankly at me. What? You have to leave this house for a while. His face went totally blank. Mom, no. Yes, Daniel. I didn't destroy those photos, but you built the home where she believed she could. He shook his head. I'm your son. I know. This is my home. No, Daniel, I said softly. It was your childhood home, but it's my home now. The words stung him. I could see it. But they were true. He recoiled, as if physically struck. So you're kicking me out too? I am asking you to leave temporarily. Because of Lauren and because of you. That quieted him. I forced myself to press on. You need time away from this place. Away from the assumption that just because I am your mother, I will swallow whatever collateral damage you bring through my door. You need to figure out what kind of man you want to be when nobody is softening the blow. Daniel's jaw began to tremble. Where am I supposed to go? A hotel, a friend's place, or with Lauren's parents. You are an adult, Daniel. He looked utterly wounded, almost betrayed. You sound so cold. I'm not cold, I whispered, my voice finally cracking. I am absolutely heartbroken. There is a massive difference. He looked away, up toward the ceiling. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Emma, I lowered my voice. She can stay here today if you and Lauren need to figure things out. I won't drag her into this mess. But you and Lauren have to decide where she sleeps tonight. Together, calmly, without using her as a human shield. Daniel looked up the stairs. You're not kicking her out? Never. His eyes closed in heavy relief and shame. I love that little girl, I said. And because I love her, she cannot grow up thinking family means letting people destroy you. Daniel collapsed into a chair. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. For once, I sighed. Don't start by trying to fix it. Start by telling the truth. He stared up at me. Tell Lauren the truth. Tell yourself the truth. Tell Emma only what she needs to hear, but never lie to her. And if you ever want to come back home, you must return with respect, not entitlement, and certainly not excuses. Respect. He gave a slow nod, tears streaming down his face. I walked to the table and picked up a single photo. It showed Thomas teaching Daniel to ride his bicycle in our driveway. Daniel was only about 6 years old, helmet crooked, screaming with a mix of fear and laughter. Thomas was running right beside him, his hand hovering behind the seat, ready to catch him, but never holding on. I slid the picture over to Daniel. His fingers trembled as he took it. "He let go," I whispered. Daniel stared down at the image. "He had to," I continued. Daniel covered his mouth as a heavy sob escaped him. I wanted to hold my son more than anything in that moment, but I held back. Sometimes love isn't catching someone before they fall. Sometimes love is stepping away so they can finally feel the solid ground. 20 minutes later, Daniel had packed a small bag. Before stepping out, he lingered in the doorway, coat draped over his arm. "I love you, Mom," he said. "I love you too," I replied. He lingered, perhaps hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. When the front door finally clicked shut, I sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by the torn photos of the man who had once promised we'd face the world as one. For the first time since Thomas passed, I realized that honoring his memory didn't mean clutching on to the past. It meant remembering how brave his love had taught me to be. Once Daniel left, I figured Emma would stay upstairs. Children often hide when adults shatter their world. They curl up in corners, behind closed doors, under heavy blankets, praying that if they stay small, the storm will bypass them. But Emma came downstairs 20 minutes later. She wore jeans and a soft pink sweater, her messy hair clearly a result of trying to brush it herself. Clutched in her arms were her stuffed rabbit and a tiny blue journal with a sparkly cover. I remained at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the ruined photographs. "Grandma," she whispered. I turned immediately. "Come here, sweetie." She crept closer, searching my expression the way children do when gauging exactly how much heavy truth they're allowed to handle. "Did Daddy leave too?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, just for a little bit, because Mommy threw away Grandpa's photographs." "Part of it," I said, "and also because Daddy needs some quiet time to think." Emma stared at the table. "Is everyone mad?" I opened my arms. She collapsed into my embrace and I held her tight. "No one is mad at you, baby," I whispered. "None of this is your fault." She nodded, though her small frame remained stiff. Then she held up the blue book. "I saved something," she whispered. I peered down at her. "What do you mean?" She carefully opened the pages. It was a children's diary, decorated with small lines and stars in the margins. Safely tucked between two protective pages lay a single photograph. My heart skipped a beat. It was Thomas teaching Daniel how to ride that bicycle. Not the larger print I had just given my son. This was a tiny, wallet-sized version I'd completely forgotten about. Thomas was running alongside Daniel, a protective hand hovering behind the bike seat, while Daniel let out a joyful, frightened scream. The young maple tree stood in the background, slender and bright. Emma carefully pulled the photo out with both hands. "I found it on the floor when Mommy was packing up photos last week," she said. "I thought it dropped by mistake, but then Mommy said old pictures make this place sad. So I hid it." I held the fragile photograph as if it were spun glass. "You saved this?" Emma nodded softly. "I didn't want Grandpa to be lost." Something deep inside me shattered. I pressed the photograph against my chest and closed my eyes. I spent the whole night pulling Thomas out of the trash. Yet this sweet child had been protecting him before I even knew he was in danger. "Oh, Emma," I whispered, watching her eyes fill with tears. Was it wrong? No. I pulled her close again. No, sweetheart. It was pure love. That is when she started crying. Not out loud, but with the heavy, exhausted sorrow of a child carrying way too much. "I am sorry, Grandma." "For what?" I heard Mommy say Grandpa was just a dead man. A lump formed in my throat. Emma wiped her face on her sleeve. And I did not say anything, because she gets so mad when I talk about him. I gently cupped her face. "Listen to me. You are just a child. It is not your job to fight adult battles." "But I wanted to." "I know, sweetie." She said if I kept asking about Grandpa, you would cry more. She said I was keeping you sad. A wave of cold anger rushed through me, but I kept my expression calm for Emma. That was not fair of her to say. Emma looked down. "I do not want to make you sad." "You do not," I said firmly. "When you ask about your grandpa, you help me remember love, and that is very different from sadness." She looked uncertain. "But you cry sometimes." "Yes," I admitted, "because I miss him so much." But tears are not always a bad thing. Sometimes tears are just love with nowhere else to go. Emma let that sink in. Then she whispered, "Mommy said this house was going to be her future home." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I froze. When did she say that? Emma nervously twisted her toy rabbit's ear. She said it on the phone a lot, and once when she was angry because Daddy said you were not ready. Ready for what? To move into a smaller place. I shut my eyes for a moment. Lauren had not just been planning. She was actively planting seeds in Emma's mind, making her believe my home was already promised, just waiting for me to fade away. Emma kept talking. She said, "Big houses are for families with kids, not lonely old ladies who talk to photographs." My grip tightened on the frame. I wanted to snap. I wanted to scream to Emma that her mother was completely and utterly wrong. But children carry pieces of both parents, and attacking one only hurts the child. So, I forced myself to choose my words with extreme care. "Your mother said some things she really should not have." Emma looked up at me. "Do you hate her?" The question stung. "No," I answered after a long silence. "I do not hate her." "Then why did you kick her out?" "Because loving someone does not mean giving them permission to hurt you. I hope she changes, but I do not have to endure her cruelty in the meantime." Emma leaned her head against my side. "Is Daddy bad?" she asked. I stared at the empty staircase, remembering the look on Daniel's face when he left. "No, my love. Your father is not a bad man, but he made weak choices, and weak choices can deeply hurt people." Emma nodded, as if saving those words for later. We sat there in silence for a long time. Then she looked at the ruined photographs scattered across the table. "Can we fix them?" "Some," I whispered, "but not all of them. Can we put Grandpa back on the wall?" I forced a smile through the ache in my chest. "Yes, sweetie, we can." Emma climbed up beside me. Together, we began sorting the pictures into piles, some with cracked frames, others with water-stained corners. Some needed new backing, and others would never look the same, but still deserved saving. She handled each print so gently. "Is this Grandpa holding Daddy?" Yes, it is. Daniel was only 2 days old there. Your grandpa looked so nervous. Emma nodded, and I let out a soft laugh. He was absolutely terrified. He always said Daniel was so small, he was terrified of breaking him. Emma smiled. Did he? No, sweetheart. He just loved him. She stared at the picture for a long time. Maybe Daddy forgot. Those simple words cut right through me. Maybe Daniel had just forgotten. Maybe that is what grief, shame, debt, and a toxic marriage did. They did not erase love, but buried it so deep Daniel could not reach it without pain. Maybe, I whispered. Emma picked up another photo. It was Thomas sitting in his armchair with baby Emma asleep on his chest. She stared. Is that me? Yes, I said. I do not remember. You were so tiny. Did he hold me a lot? Every single chance he got. Her lips began to tremble. Mommy said I only met him a few times, so it does not matter. I gently took her hand. It matters. Love is not any less real just because you were too young to remember it. Emma pressed the photograph to her chest, exactly like I had done earlier. Can this one go in my room? Yes, sweetheart, if you want it. I really do. By late morning, our kitchen table felt like a place of rescue rather than ruin. Emma brought over tape, tissues, and a small box of stickers. I explained that we could not put stickers on these old pictures, and she nodded solemnly, treating it like an important museum project. Around noon, the phone rang. Daniel's name lit up the screen. Emma saw it too. Is Daddy coming back? She asked. I do not know, sweetie, I replied. Hello? Daniel's voice sounded heavy. Mom, is Emma okay? She is safe. A long silence followed. Can I talk to her? I looked at Emma. Your daddy wants to talk to you. She hesitated before taking the phone. Hi, Daddy. I could not hear what he said, but I watched her face. Sadness, relief, confusion, and love. Then she said, Grandma says I am allowed to remember Grandpa. After another pause, Emma looked down at the photograph in her hand. You should remember him too. I turned my head as tears flooded my eyes. When she handed the phone back to me, Daniel was quiet. Then he whispered, Mom, yes. I got a hotel room for tonight. All right. Lauren went to stay with her parents. Okay. He took a shaky breath. Emma wants to stay with you today. She can. Thank you, he said. I waited. Then he whispered, I am so sorry. She felt like she had to save that picture. I looked at Emma, who was gently placing Thomas's photo beside her rabbit. So am I replied. After we hung up, Emma and I carried the tiny, rescued photograph up to her bedroom. She chose a spot on her nightstand, right next to her moon-shaped lamp. Grandpa can watch over me here, she whispered. I kissed her forehead. I know he would love that. Later that afternoon, as golden sunlight flooded the hallway, I realized Lauren had failed in a way she never expected. She tried to erase Thomas from this home. Instead, she only taught Emma why he truly mattered. And maybe, just maybe, my granddaughter's love would be the thread that leads Daniel back to the man his father raised him to be. Lauren came back the next afternoon with reinforcements. I spotted the car long before I saw her face. A dark SUV pulled into my driveway just after 2, its tires crunching loud on the gravel by the maple tree. I was in the living room with Emma, sorting through the last of Thomas's ruined photos. We stacked the ones we saved neatly by the sofa. Emma looked up from the floor, asking if that was her mommy. I walked to the window. Lauren stepped out. Then Patricia Miller. Then Mark Miller. Patricia was a tall woman with perfectly styled silver blonde hair and a face that seemed permanently set to disapprove. Mark was broad, heavy-set, and flushed, the kind of man who mistook volume for authority. My stomach tightened instantly. "Emma," I said softly, "go upstairs to your room for a bit. Please, sweetheart." She glanced at the window, then nodded. She asked if her mommy was still mad. I told her the grown-ups needed to talk. Emma squeezed her rabbit and went upstairs. The doorbell rang. I opened the door, but stayed in the doorway. Lauren stood between her parents, wearing sunglasses, despite the shady porch. Patricia peered past me as if inspecting a cheap hotel room. Mark stood wide on the porch. "Maria," Patricia said coldly, "we need to talk." I kept one hand on the edge of the door. "Lauren can schedule a time with Robert Hayes if this is about the house." Patricia raised her eyebrows. "A lawyer for family?" I stared at Lauren. "Your daughter made this necessary." Lauren pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were bloodshot, though I couldn't tell if it was tears or rage. She said she just wanted her things. "You can grab your belongings," I replied, "but your parents aren't stepping foot inside this house." Mark gave a sharp laugh. "You don't get to treat my daughter like a criminal." I locked eyes with him. She shouldn't have gone into my bedroom and thrown away my husband's letters. Patricia waved her hand as if brushing away dust. Lauren told us all about those pictures. Honestly, Maria, this has been blown way out of proportion. Something inside me went ice cold. "Out of proportion," I whispered. Patricia leaned in, telling me I was just a grieving woman. "No one's denying that," she said. "But grief makes people possessive, controlling, even cruel." I nearly smiled. Not because it was funny, but because Lauren had obviously learned from the best. "You came to my own porch just to call me cruel." "We came," Mark barked, "because you threw our daughter out on the street." "She went straight to your house," I countered. "That's not the point." "It feels exactly like the point." Lauren's jaw clenched. "You humiliated me," Lauren snapped. "No," I replied. "I held you accountable." Patricia stepped forward, and I only backed up to avoid a physical fight in the doorway. She took that as permission and marched in. Mark followed. Lauren came last. The instant Patricia walked into the living room, her eyes locked onto the photos spread across the coffee table. She sighed, muttering about this again. I slowly shut the front door. "Watch yourself, Patricia." She spun toward me. "You are ruining your son's marriage over some old photos." "No," I countered. "Lauren broke this family the moment she decided my memories were just clutter." Mark crossed his arms. "Daniel is morally a half-owner of this house, whether your lawyer likes it or not." "Morally?" I questioned. "Did morality tell Lauren to call a real estate agent?" Patricia looked at Lauren, who avoided her eyes. Mark's face hardened. "A young family has needs, and you're sitting on a valuable property." "There it is again," I replied. "Property, value, needs. None of you have mentioned respect." Patricia's voice turned sharp. "Respect is a two-way street. Lauren's tried for months to make this house livable." "Livable for who?" "For everyone." "No," I said, "for herself." Lauren snapped that I made it impossible for her to feel welcome. I looked around the room. You were always welcome here. But that wasn't enough, was it? You wanted ownership. Patricia pointed a finger at me. You are just an old woman alone in a massive house. Daniel and Lauren have a kid. Any decent mother would want to help. I felt the insult, but I didn't let it pierce me. A decent mother doesn't have to hand over her home to prove her love. Mark stepped closer. You'd better think twice before continuing this. People in town know us. They know Lauren, and they know what a great mother she is. I realized then this wasn't a conversation. It was pressure. What exactly are you threatening? I asked. Mark offered a cold smile. No threat, just the truth. Our friends at church might find it interesting how Maria Griffin kicked out her daughter-in-law and devastated her own granddaughter over some old photos. Lauren looked down, but didn't try to stop him. Patricia added, and if you think a judge favors a grandmother creating instability for a kid, you might be surprised. I walked to the side table and picked up my phone. Lauren's eyes narrowed, asking if I was calling Robert. Patricia snickered. I dialed anyway, and Robert answered on the second ring. Robert, Lauren is here with her parents. They're threatening to ruin my reputation and take me to court. His tone shifted instantly. Say absolutely nothing more to them. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up the phone. Mark just shook his head. You really do hide behind that lawyer, Mark sneered. No, I replied. I stand beside people who respect boundaries. Those next 10 minutes dragged on. Lauren went upstairs for more clothes, while Patricia glared at me as if I were something repulsive. Mark paced near the fireplace, eyeing the photos, the walls, and the furniture, as if mentally pricing every item. When Robert finally arrived, he wasn't alone. He carried a file folder even thicker than yesterday's. Good afternoon, he announced as he stepped inside. I hear we have some concerns. Patricia held her head high. We are here because this woman has treated our daughter like garbage. Robert looked my way. Maria? I nodded silently. They're threatening to tell everyone I kicked Lauren out unfairly. They even brought up court. Robert turned directly to Patricia and Mark. Let me be very clear. Maria Griffin is the only owner of this home. Lauren was a guest, and her permission to stay is officially revoked. Mark scoffed, saying they already heard that. Robert opened the folder. He explained he had copies of the text messages I provided from Daniel's phone that morning. Right then, Lauren came down the stairs. Her face fell. What texts? Robert looked at her. Messages between you and Carter Bloom, the realtor. Messages discussing how to convince me that the house was too much for me. Texts calling me the obstacle. Patricia shot Lauren a sharp look. Lauren's voice pitched up. Daniel gave you my private messages? Daniel gave me messages from his own phone, Robert countered, including the one where you wrote, once we get Maria out of the way, we can finally breathe. The room fell silent. Mark's confidence shattered. I stared at Lauren. Out of the way, she swallowed. That was taken out of context. Robert continued. There are also messages indicating you entered my private bedroom and took personal items without permission. Patricia's face tightened. Lauren snapped, I was cleaning. No, I said. You were erasing. Robert closed the folder. If this harassment continues, my client has options. formal notice, police documentation, a civil claim for damaged property, and, if necessary, a protective order. Mark's face reddened. Are you threatening my family? Robert's voice stayed even. I am explaining consequences. For the first time, Patricia looked uncertain. Lauren glared at me with pure hatred. You would do that to Emma's mother? I would do whatever is necessary to protect my home, my peace, and my granddaughter from being used as a weapon. Her eyes welled, but there was no softness. Patricia grabbed Lauren's arm. Get your things. Lauren jerked away. Mom! Now. That was when I knew Patricia believed the messages. Not enough to apologize, but enough to retreat. Lauren stormed back upstairs. Mark muttered under his breath, no longer threatening me. Patricia stood stiffly near the door, avoiding my eyes. When Lauren finally came down with 2 bags, she paused in the living room. Her gaze fell on the coffee table, on Thomas's photographs, then on me. You think you won? She spat. I shook my head. No one wins when a family reaches this point. She laughed bitterly. Keep telling yourself that. Robert stepped slightly between us. Lauren, it is time to leave. Patricia opened the door. Mark walked out first, and Patricia followed. Lauren lingered a second longer. From upstairs, Emma's bedroom door creaked. Lauren looked toward the sound. Emma, I lifted my hand. Not now. Her eyes flashed. She is my daughter. Yes, I said, and she is not your shield. Lauren's mouth trembled with rage before she walked out. This time, when the door closed, I locked it. Robert stood beside me in the quiet hallway. You handled that well, he said. I looked at the lock, then at the stairs, and finally at the living room full of wounded memories. No, I whispered. I handled it late. Upstairs, Emma called softly. Grandma! I turned toward her voice, knowing the next battle wouldn't be with Lauren. It would be helping a little girl understand that love should never force her to choose which adult she's allowed to remember. Daniel came back alone 2 days later. I spotted him from the kitchen window before he even knocked. He parked at the curb instead of the driveway, as if he no longer had the right to pull up close. He sat in his car for several minutes with both hands gripped on the wheel, staring blankly ahead. I watched him, my heart aching in that complicated way only a mother's can. Part of me wanted to fling open the door before he reached it, but another part of me remembered Thomas's photographs in the trash. So I waited. When the knock finally came, it was soft. I opened the door. Daniel stood on the porch wearing the same navy jacket he used to wear to work, but he looked nothing like the confident man who had once walked into my kitchen and told me Lauren was only trying to help. His face was drawn, his eyes swollen, and he hadn't shaved. Hi, Mom, he whispered. Hello, Daniel. He swallowed hard. Can I come in? I studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. He stepped inside slowly, glancing around the hallway as if seeing it for the first time after a long absence. His eyes drifted to the living room, where Thomas's workshop photo was back on the bookshelf. The cracked wedding photo wasn't on display yet. I had placed it carefully in a drawer until I could get the glass replaced. Daniel noticed the empty space on the mantel where it belonged. I'm not here to ask to move back, he said quickly. I closed the door. Then why are you here? He looked down. To tell the truth. Those words were a start. Not forgiveness, but a beginning. We sat at the kitchen table, the very table where Robert had laid out the deed, the same table where Lauren's web of lies had finally collapsed. I poured Daniel some coffee, not because things were normal, but because some habits run deeper than pain. He gripped the mug with both hands. "Lauren's still at her parents' house," he said. "Emma stayed with me at the hotel last night." "How is she?" Confused. His voice cracked, trying to sound brave. "She shouldn't have to be brave." "I know," he whispered. He stared into his coffee for a long time. Then he admitted, "Lauren and I have been in trouble for longer than I let on." I didn't interrupt. "At first I thought it was just normal stress," he continued. "Bills, work, parenting. But Lauren always wanted more. Better cars, better furniture, better vacations, a better school district, better everything. And every time I suggested we slow down, she made me feel small." He let out a bitter little laugh. She'd say, "Your father built a whole life with his hands. What exactly are you building, Daniel?" The sheer cruelty of it made my stomach tighten. "She used Thomas against you." He nodded. "All the time. Never in front of you, but at home, in private. She told me I was living in a dead man's shadow, that you still treated Dad like the man of the house because I never became one." I closed my eyes. There it was again. Lauren hadn't just attacked me. She'd weaponized Daniel's deepest insecurity, feeding it until it grew teeth. "That doesn't excuse what you allowed," I said. "I know," he said, looking up quickly. "I know it doesn't. I'm not here to blame her for everything." "Good." He took a shaky breath. That was the first honest thing he had said to me in months. "I was ashamed," he whispered softly. "When the investment failed, I panicked," he said. "I took money from our savings, then used credit cards for the bills. Then Lauren signed up for that business coaching program," he said, hoping it would build her brand. "It cost way more than she told me." "How much more?" I asked. He winced. "Almost $18,000. I pressed my lips together. "And the rental property," he added. "A group investment. Lauren's friend knew someone." "I should have checked, but I didn't," he sighed. "I just wanted one win. I wanted to feel like I was moving my family forward. When it failed, Lauren said we needed a bigger solution. The house." He nodded. I glanced toward the living room, looking at the wooden shelves Thomas had built. Daniel's voice dropped. "At first, I said no. I told her you would never sell. But she said, maybe you would if we made it less painful to leave." My skin went cold. "Less painful?" I repeated. "She said the house kept you trapped," he whispered. "She said if we updated it, cleared out Dad's things, and made it feel less like him, you might see it as just property instead of a shrine." I stared at my son. "And you agreed?" Not out loud, but I didn't stop her. "That is agreement, Daniel." "I know." His eyes welled up. The room fell silent, save for the ticking clock. He wiped his face. The night she threw away the photos, I knew she was upset. I knew she went downstairs. I didn't know she took the letters, but I knew she crossed a line before coming back to bed. "And you said nothing?" I was tired. I did not soften. He looked at me. "That sounds pathetic, doesn't it? But it is the ugly truth." He nodded, accepting the shame. "I told myself I was keeping the peace," he said, "but I was just avoiding consequences. If I challenged Lauren, she would explode. If I defended you, she'd say I was still a little boy choosing his mother over his wife. If I admitted the debt, I would have to face what I did. So you let me face it instead? His face crumpled. Yes. The word cut deep, but it was necessary. Lies keep wounds infected. Only truth, even painful truth, lets the air in. I looked at him across the table. Your father would have been disappointed. Daniel closed his eyes as if struck, but I pushed on. He would not have stopped loving you. A sob broke from him. He covered his face with both hands, shoulders shaking. I sat quietly, tears welling in my own eyes. When he finally looked up, he seemed younger than he had in years. I miss him, he whispered. I know. I hated missing him here because everyone expected me to be him. No one expected that from you. I did, he replied. Every time I could not fix something. Every time Emma asked about him. Every time Lauren looked at me like I was weak. I thought Dad would have known what to do. I reached across the table, touching his hand. Your father was not born knowing what to do. He made mistakes too. He learned by taking responsibility for them. Daniel looked at my hand on his. I want to do that, he murmured. I do not know if Lauren and I can fix our marriage, or if we even should. But I called a financial counselor this morning. I am meeting with them next week. I also called Carter Bloom and told him never to contact us about this house again. I nodded slowly. That is something. I will apologize to Emma, too, properly. No blaming anyone, no confusing her. Good. And Mom, his voice trembled again. I am sorry I made you feel unsafe in your own home. That apology cut deeper than the rest, because it finally named the wound. I glanced toward the living room where Emma's small, rescued photograph sat on the side table, waiting for a frame. I believed letting you stay here was protecting my family, I said. But I forgot that protection without boundaries becomes surrender. Daniel nodded. I cannot let you move back in right now. I know. And I cannot promise quick trust. I know that too. But I need you to be someone Emma can trust. Someone I can trust. Someone your father would recognize. He wiped his eyes. I want that too. For the first time in days, I believed him. Not completely, not blindly, but enough to let a little hope settle in the room. Before he left, Daniel stood staring at the old workshop photo of Thomas. I used to hate that picture, he admitted. I stood beside him. Why? Because he looked so happy, so sure of himself. I never felt that way. I studied Thomas's face in the frame. He wasn't always sure. He just kept showing up. Daniel nodded, then whispered, I am sorry, Dad. The house was quiet, but it did not feel empty anymore. It felt like it was listening. Daniel left a few minutes later. He did not ask to stay or beg for money. He did not ask me to talk to Lauren. He just hugged me at the door and whispered, I will do better. I held him close for one brief moment. Then I let him go. Forgiveness, like a house, cannot be rebuilt in a day. But if the foundation is not totally destroyed, you can still drive the first honest nail back into place. The next morning, I called Susan Whitaker. She had lived next door for 27 years. She brought meals when Thomas was sick, sat by me at his funeral, and once even climbed through my kitchen window with a spare key when I got locked out in the rain. She was the kind of friend who never asked if you needed help. She just showed up at your door with a plan. When I explained everything, she fell quiet. Then she said, "I will be there in 20 minutes." She pulled into my driveway in 15. She marched into my living room, holding a toolbox, paper towels, and a face full of absolute fury. "Where are the photos?" she asked. I pointed toward the coffee table. Susan took off her coat, rolled up her sleeves, and surveyed the broken frames. "All right," she declared. "We start with what can be saved." That was classic Susan. She loved with practical actions. Emma sat cross-legged on the rug, watching our movements. She wanted to help, so I let her touch only the safe things, away from the glass. She sorted the pictures by size, layering clean tissues between them. Every few minutes she looked up to ask, "Was Grandpa funny?" "Very," I whispered. "Did he even like pancakes?" "He burned them every Saturday and called them crispy." "Did he love my grandmother's pie?" Susan laughed. "Honey, that man would have proposed all over again for one slice of your grandmother's apple pie." Emma smiled, and slowly the house began to feel less like a battlefield and more like a home being stitched back together. Susan helped me take down the mirror Lauren hung above the mantel. It was heavy, cold, reflecting everything but holding nothing inside. As we lifted it from the wall, I saw the faint outline where our family photo had hung for years. My throat tightened. Susan noticed. "Do you want a minute?" I shook my head. No, I wanted it back. We found the old frame in the den closet, wrapped in newspaper. The glass was dusty but unbroken. Inside was a photo from Emma's first birthday. Thomas was thin by then, already sick, though he had hidden it so well. He sat in his chair with Emma on his knee, Daniel standing behind him, and me beside them, my hand resting on Thomas's shoulder. Lauren wasn't in that photograph. She hadn't entered our lives yet. I wondered if that was why she hated it so much. Susan wiped the glass clean. I held the frame while Emma watched from the sofa. "Can I help hang it?" Emma asked. "You can tell us if it's straight," Susan said. We lifted it onto the wall. Emma tilted her head with absolute seriousness. "A little left." Susan adjusted it a tiny bit right. I laughed for the first time in days. "You're a strict supervisor." Emma smiled. "Grandpa deserves straight." "Yes," I said softly. "He does." Next, we returned Thomas's chair to the window. The gray chair Lauren put there was moved to the den. Thomas's old chair was heavier than I remembered. Or maybe grief had just made me weaker. Susan pushed from one side, and I pulled from the other. Together we set it where it belonged, facing the maple tree. For a brief moment, I could almost see him sitting there. Not in a frightening way, not like a ghost. More like memory settling into its rightful place. By noon, the living room looked like itself again. Not exactly as it did before Lauren. Some things were still missing. Some frames needed repair. Some photos would always carry stains from the night they were thrown away. But the room breathed. The bookshelf held Thomas's workshop picture. The mantel held our family photo. The carved cross was back near the lamp. The quilt from Thomas's mother was folded over the sofa's back, soft, worn, and beautiful. Susan stood with her hands on her hips. "Now this looks like Maria Griffin's house." Emma looked up. "And Grandpa Thomas's?" I smiled. "Yes, and Grandpa Thomas's memory." Susan left in the early afternoon, after making me promise to eat. Emma went upstairs to draw a picture for Daniel. I stayed in the living room alone, holding our cracked wedding photo. I had decided to take it to a frame shop the next day. The crack across Thomas's face still hurt to see, but part of me wondered if I should keep the glass, not because I wanted the damage, but because it told the truth. Love survives cracks. It doesn't pretend they never happened. Around 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I looked through the front window. Lauren stood on the porch alone. My body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders tightened. My hand closed around the edge of the curtain. She wore a dark coat and carried no suitcase this time. Her face looked pale, but her eyes were sharp. I opened the door only halfway. "What do you want, Lauren?" She looked past me into the house. Her eyes found the restored mantel, the returned photo, Thomas's chair by the window. Her mouth tightened. "I came to talk." "You can talk from there." She gave a small, wounded laugh. "So now I'm not even allowed inside?" "No." Her expression hardened. "Maria, this has gone too far." "I agree." "Then let me come in." "No." She looked toward the stairs, though she couldn't see Emma from the porch. "Is my daughter here?" "She's upstairs." "I want to see her." "You can arrange that with Daniel." "I'm her mother." "Yes," I said. "And today you're also the woman who tried to use her as a shield in my living room." Lauren's face flushed. I was upset. So was I, but I didn't drag Emma into the middle. She looked away, jaw tight. For one brief moment, I thought she might apologize. A real apology. Not one shaped like blame. Not one beginning with if. Just the simple, difficult words. "I was wrong." You have no idea what it feels like to be treated like an outsider. I looked at her carefully. You weren't treated like an outsider when you came here. You became one when you tried to take what wasn't yours. Her eyes flashed. I wanted a future. At my expense? At everyone's expense, she snapped. Do you think I wanted debt? Do you think I wanted to live under my mother-in-law's roof? Do you think I wanted to feel like every corner of this house belonged to a dead man and never to me? There it was again. The resentment, the jealousy toward a man who wasn't alive to defend himself. I kept my voice steady. Thomas didn't take space from you. Your greed did. Lauren stepped closer. You act so righteous, but you liked having power. You liked watching Daniel depend on you. No, I said. I liked believing my son still trusted me. That quieted her for half a second. You put everything back. Yes, of course you did. I followed her gaze. This is my home. It could have been ours. No, Lauren. It could have been a place where you were welcomed. That's different. Her eyes glistened, but I still didn't trust the tears. Daniel won't answer my calls. That's between you and Daniel. You turned him against me. No, your choices showed him what he needed to see. She laughed bitterly. And what about Emma? Are you going to turn her against me too? Fill her head with stories about Grandpa Thomas until she thinks I'm the villain? I felt anger rise, but I held it back. Emma's a child. She deserves truth without poison. I won't speak hatred into her heart. Lauren's voice lowered. But you'll let her choose you. I will let her love everyone she loves, without being punished for it. That struck her. For a brief moment, Lauren's face shifted. Beneath the anger, I saw something almost like fear. Maybe she knew Emma had seen too much. Maybe she understood that control doesn't look like love once a child learns the difference. Then a small voice came from behind me. "Grandma?" I turned. Emma stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding the drawing she had made. Her eyes moved from me to Lauren. "Mommy!" Lauren's expression softened. "Come here, baby." Emma took a single step, then froze. I didn't touch her or hold her back. Lauren noticed immediately. "Emma," she coaxed, squeezing out a smile. "Mommy just wants a hug." Emma looked at me. I whispered, "You choose, sweetheart." Lauren glared at me, absolutely furious. But Emma just crept toward the door. She didn't rush into her mother's arms like she usually would. She stood right beside me, tiny and unsure. "Are you still mad?" Emma asked. Lauren knelt down. "I'm sad because Grandma made Mommy leave." I watched Emma's face shift from confusion to sudden understanding. "Grandma says grown-ups have to own their choices," Emma replied. Lauren froze. I closed my eyes, exhaling. Of all the lessons I had shared, that was the one she carried. Lauren's weak smile trembled. "Yes, well, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes." Emma just stared. "Then you should say sorry." Silence fell over the porch. Lauren stared at her daughter, and so did I. Kids can cut through any excuse with pure truth. Lauren opened her mouth, but she didn't apologize. Instead, she stood. "I'll call your father," she said. Emma looked down. Lauren glared at me, her face hardening. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed, "but this door is closed. I shut it. Not slammed, just closed and locked." Emma stood beside me in silence. After a second, she whispered, "Was I mean?" I knelt down to her level. "No, sweetheart. That was just a boundary." She peeked at the door. "Do boundaries hurt?" "Sometimes." "Do they mean you don't love them?" I gently touched her cheek. "No. Sometimes they are how we protect love from breaking." Emma buried her head in my shoulder, and I held her tight as the sunset lit the hall. Behind us, my late husband's photo watched over the room. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was clinging to the past. I felt like I was protecting our future. Peace didn't rush back. It slipped in slowly through small, quiet moments that felt almost too delicate to trust. It began that first Saturday morning. Emma stayed behind after her mother left. She tiptoed into the kitchen in her socks, climbed onto a chair, and asked to make her grandfather's crispy pancakes. I laughed until I had to lean on the counter. "They were only crispy because he always burnt them," I said. Emma smiled. "Then let's burn one for him." And so we did. A single, heavily charred pancake sat on a tiny plate right in the middle of our kitchen table. Emma insisted it was for keeping, not eating. I didn't correct her. Some rituals start just like that, from a child's pure love, growing sacred before we even realize. My son Daniel dropped by that afternoon. He didn't use his spare key. He knocked instead. That meant the world to me. Opening the door, I found him on the porch holding a small paper bag from the frame shop downtown. His eyes scanned my face, searching for permission before speaking. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Daniel." He raised the paper bag. "I got your wedding photo fixed. New glass, original frame. They couldn't lift every stain from the print, but they salvaged what they could. For a second, I lost my voice. He passed it to me with both hands. Inside was the picture of Thomas and me on our wedding day. The cracked glass was gone. The photo was still tarnished at the bottom, but my husband's face was whole again. My fingers shook. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. Daniel nodded, tearing up. I should have protected it before it ever got broken. That was the real change. No excuses. He was finally acknowledging the pain he caused. Hearing his voice, Emma came running down the hall. "Daddy!" Daniel dropped to his knees, arms wide. She embraced him tightly, but she peeked back at me first, ensuring she was allowed to love him. That absolutely broke my heart. A child should never have to seek permission from a room before loving their own parent. Daniel saw it too. His expression softened, and he pulled her close. "Hey there, sweetheart," he murmured. "I'm sorry things got scary." Emma pulled back slightly. "Are you still sad?" "Yes," he confessed. "But I'm trying to be honest now." She gave a solemn nod. "Grandma says that's important." She's right. Over the next month, Daniel followed through on his word. Not flawlessly, but steadily. He started seeing a financial advisor. He shared his calendar with me, not because I asked, but to prove he wasn't hiding anymore. He canceled 2 major credit cards. He set up a payment plan and owned the rental property loss without blaming Lauren, even though the situation was messy. He even started therapy. That was his biggest step. My therapist says I dodge conflict because I mistake silence for peace, he admitted to me one evening. I watched him over the rim of my teacup. She sounds wise. He offered a weary smile. She also told me to stop comparing myself to Dad. I looked over at my husband's photograph. Your father would agree. Daniel stared at the picture for a long time. I wish I had asked him more while he was here. Ask them now, I replied. He frowned. Ask me, I urged. Ask Susan or Robert. Talk to anyone who knew him. Keeping his memory alive shouldn't make you feel small. That became our next quiet routine. Most Sunday afternoons, Daniel and Emma joined me for dinner. It was frequent enough that these old floorboards remembered their footsteps again. After dinner, Daniel would ask me a single question about Thomas. What was he afraid of? Did he ever fail big? Did he ever feel inadequate? I answered him with total honesty. Yes, Thomas was terrified when you were born. Yes, he lost our entire life savings rushing to start that cabinetry business. Yes, he felt like a failure when we struggled to pay bills. Daniel drank in every word like a man dying of thirst. The more human his father became, the less haunted Daniel appeared. He and Lauren eventually separated without the usual screaming, at least under my roof. He told me they were living apart while sorting out their future. But Lauren still called. Sometimes she wept, sometimes she blamed, and sometimes she apologized, only to retract it instantly. I stayed out of it. That was a boundary I had to master. A mother's love can turn into a rope if she throws it into every storm her child creates. I needed to support Daniel without climbing into the wreckage of his marriage and pretending I could fix it. Emma stayed with me almost every weekend. Her picture of Thomas holding her when she was a baby sat on her nightstand. Sometimes she brought it downstairs asking for stories. Other times, she just touched the frame before going back to her coloring. One afternoon she asked, "Grandma, If Mommy says sorry one day, will Grandpa's pictures forgive her? I sat on the rug beside her. Pictures don't forgive, sweetheart. People do. Will you? I glanced toward the mantel where our repaired wedding photo now stood. I don't know yet, I admitted. Forgiveness is not pretending something didn't hurt. It takes time. Emma nodded, asking, "But the pictures can stay?" "Yes," I whispered. "They can stay." Months passed. The maple tree turned gold, then went bare. Winter arrived quietly, dusting the porch railings Thomas had built with snow. The house felt different now, not frozen in the past like Lauren claimed, not trapped, but alive. Because memories, when honored, do not stop a home from growing. They give it roots. In January, I called Robert Hayes and asked him to help me build something new. Not a revenge document or a punishment, a future. I established the Thomas Griffin Family Education Fund for Emma. It wasn't enormous, but it was steady. A portion of my savings would go in every year to help Emma with college, trade school, or whatever path she chooses. When I told Daniel, he broke down. "Mom, you don't have to do that." "I know," I said. After everything, I squeezed his hand. "This isn't about the past. This is for Emma and for your father." He looked toward the mantel. "Dad would love that." "Yes," I agreed. He always believed in building things that lasted. Daniel went quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to contribute when I can." "You can," I told him, "once your own foundation is steady." He smiled faintly. "That sounds exactly like Dad." It is. By spring, this house felt like mine again in a deeper way. Not because Lauren was gone, but because I finally stopped asking permission to belong in my own life. I still missed Thomas every day. Some mornings I reached across the empty bed before remembering. Some evenings I turned to tell him something funny Emma had said, only to find his chair empty. But grief no longer felt like a locked room. It felt like a window I could open. One warm afternoon, Emma and I planted flowers right beneath the maple tree. Daniel knelt beside us, getting soil on his jeans and laughing when Emma told him he was doing it wrong. For a second, I saw past and future collide. Thomas's tree, Daniel trying, Emma growing, and me, still here, still standing, still the owner of my home, my memories, and my peace. Lauren threw away those photos because she thought they were just paper. But she was wrong. They were proof. Proof that love lived here and that I was cherished. Proof that a woman doesn't become disposable just because she grows older, becomes a widow, or chooses silence for too long. As I placed the last flower into the soil, I looked up at the house Thomas and I had built, and I finally understood. I didn't throw Lauren out because she hated my past. I threw her out because she thought she could steal my future, and I wasn't done living it. Sometimes, the deepest disrespect doesn't arrive as screaming. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as concern, organization, or moving on. But nobody has the right to erase the love that built you. No one has the right to treat your memories like clutter, your grief like weakness, or your home like something they can claim before you're done living in it. My story isn't just about photographs. It's about dignity. It's about drawing boundaries. It's about that painful moment when love has to stop making excuses for people who only cause harm. Family should never require you to disappear. just so someone else can feel powerful. True family honors your past while helping you build what comes next. Grief is no prison when held with love. Memories aren't chains when they remind us of our strength, our loyalty, and the people who helped us survive. And forgiveness, if it ever comes, should never be forced by guilt. It must come with truth, accountability, and real change. If my story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to protect your peace from someone in your own family? Do you believe I did the right thing by making Lauren leave? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please like this video, subscribe for more emotional family stories, and comment where you're watching from and the local time. Your stories, your wisdom, and your presence mean more than you know.